glove. That's the third breakaway of the game between these two teams already. Drags to the middle. What a play. They center. Binnington. Pad save. Denying Barbashev. Barbashev to the middle to Eichel and a poke check save. Binnington. Trouble gets it to Buchnevich. Drives. He scores. Bring out the Zamboni. An overtime game winner for Buchnevich. And the Blues defeat the Knights 2-1.
Keep us in the game, big step up, big for us, and like I tell him after Arizona sleeps, plays off.
You know, we had a couple bad puck plays and breakdowns, but he made some big saves, a couple breakaways, a couple 2-on-1s, so big reason for the win.
That's what it sounded like right here on 101 ESPN last night, your home of the St. Louis Blues, as they get a big win, Alex, on the road in Vegas against the Golden Knights, because of course they do. This is the team that we know them to be, right? They play up or down to their competition. But here's the thing, Alex. I'm going to take this a little bit of a different direction, because last night, I didn't think it was about the Blues playing up or down to their competition. I think that was about Jordan Binnington. That was one of the best individual performances I've seen by a Blues player in the regular season since I moved here to St. Louis in 2016. He was unbelievable last night. And I felt at times as if I was watching a different game than some of the people that were analyzing it. And this is no shot against anybody, I promise you. But as I was watching it, I felt like every 20 to 30 seconds I was seeing another highlight reel save from Jordan Binnington. It's like, man, he is saving their bacon tonight. And you look at the advanced numbers after the game, and that was absolutely the case. According to Money Puck, Jordan Binnington saved 4 more goals than you would expect based on the quality of the shots that he was seeing last night. The only time in his entire career that he saved more was actually 2 years ago against the same Vegas Golden Knights. So according to the advanced numbers, this was the second best regular season game that we've seen by Jordan Binnington in his career. So that made me feel a little better about it. So I thought I was taking crazy pills as I was listening to everybody saying, hey, the Blues outplayed the Vegas Golden Knights last night. I didn't feel that way at all. I think Jordan Binnington single-handedly stole you 2 points last night by standing on his head and playing like the goalie we remember that he was in the 2019 playoff run. That was unbelievable, watching that last night from Benner.
That was the best game that we've seen, or at least I've seen from Jordan Binnington since he played in Game 7 against Boston.
Man.
Because there have been very little games that it feels like from start to finish he was getting peppered with shots. I mean, that felt like last night there was never a moment where the Blues got the sustained zone time. That was all about rushes up the ice. The first period, I think they had about 6 2-on-1s that they had to handle, and Jordan Binnington stopped every single one of them. He was very calm. He was very cool and collected in net. He used his glove. He used his stick as well as you can ask for. That was the game that we've said a lot this season, that the Blues' only reason they're in this position is because their goaltender is bailing them out. Now, good on the Blues to fight back in the first period and score that goal late and get that sustained zone time after a failed power play. Good on the Blues to keep their head up and find ways to get some offensive opportunities. But that entire game, the reason they walked out of there with 2 points was because of Jordan Binnington. And I go back to the Mike Liut comment that he made to us about a month ago when we were talking about Binnington and the start to the season, and Liut said, yeah, he's looked great, but he said a goaltender can only do so much in terms of providing a spark to his team. The best way he can do it is to stay in net and to make the big saves when you need to. Curb said it on pregame last night. The Blues need their goaltender to out-goaltender the other guy. Binnington did that, and frankly, I think he out-goaltendered every goalie in the National Hockey League last night with that performance.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, I guess it was all Benner, according to BK. It's not like the Blues controlled the ice for much of the game, especially in the second, or were pesky and tough to play against. It must be all or nothing. Terrible take, BK. Good to have you back. First of all, it's good to be back. Thank you guys so much for listening.
I don't know what game they were watching if they saw the Blues being pesky and fighting back.
High danger chances. Alex, Vegas had 20 last night. The Blues had 6. If you go look at where the shots were coming from, the way that they put this on Natural Stat Trick, one of those advanced analytics number sites, they have it color-coded. Wherever the most shots are coming from, if there's a ton of them, it is bright red. Alex, do you know where that was last night in front of the Blues net?
Yeah, it basically, the crease wasn't blue last night, it was bright red.
It was right in front of Jordan Binnington. Man, at some point, we can just give the credit where it's due. And this has not been the case in every game this year, but last night it absolutely was. Jordan Binnington was the sole reason you won that game. If not for him, you lose that game like 6-1. If an average goaltender is in net last night for the St. Louis Blues, they lose in regulation and it is a blowout. And frankly, that goaltender is probably replaced midway through because of how many high danger chances they had against. Jordan Binnington went last night from, like, in a lot of the number sites, the 16th best goalie so far this season to like a top 5 goalie in the NHL based on one performance.
Yep.
He went up that high in the rankings. That is how unbelievable he was in net for the Blues. I'm not taking away anything from him. I'm not releasing any of the credit from him. That dude was amazing last night. Here's the problem, Alex. Can't expect that every night. Because if you do, you're going to get beat more often than not. And it's been my concern about the Blues over the last couple of weeks. In their last 10 games, they are allowing almost 4 goals per game. 30th in the NHL they are. Even after last night, including that game. 3.8 goals allowed per game. They are 25th in the league in shots allowed per game. And some may say, yeah, but it's about the quality, BK. Yes, they are also allowing quality chances in those games. They have allowed 4 more goals against San Jose, LA, Arizona, Nashville, Buffalo, and Arizona again, twice in that stretch. Alex, I am a little concerned about the fact that they are giving up so many chances and they are relying so heavily on their goalie to keep them in these games. It's not just the chances against that we saw at the beginning of the season that were coming from the outside. Now they're getting odd man rushes that are going the other direction. Last night, the guy that covers the Golden Knights said he thought the Golden Knights had more opportunities on breakaways in the first 11 minutes of the game than he had seen in any game so far this season by Vegas. So it's a problem, and it's got to get corrected. What are you seeing going wrong that's breaking down with their defense right now?
Well, and to that point with those odd man rushes, Megan Shaka of ESPN, who does a lot of advanced analytics in the NHL, the Blues rank 29th in the National Hockey League with odd man rushes against per game. They're averaging about 5.29 odd man rushes, and they're averaging about 3 shots per odd man rush so far this season. So that's what I'm seeing. You know, you break it up into increments. The first 10, 12 games of the season, the Blues were the stingy team that weren't allowing anything to the inside. It was outside shots. They were boring offensively. We were complaining because they weren't scoring goals. They weren't getting shots on goal, but they were sticking to the defensive structure. This seems like a team now, at least just my opinion, that they're trying to wait for the opportunity that the other team makes a mistake and they go heavy offense. Like, they're a odd man rush team just as much as their opponent is an odd man rush team.
Interesting.
The problem is, and at least in my opinion, is when the Blues get in the offensive zone, there's way too much cross ice passes. Last night, a perfect example was the penalty that Pavel Buchnevich had to take in the third period. Thomas skates into the zone, and rather than dump it in and go after it, he tries to go across the ice. It gets picked off, and you're coming back the other way. Why? Because all 5 guys are pushing for offense. If you're going to push for offense, you've got to utilize the boards. The Blues either aren't utilizing the board so that they can get sustained zone time, and when they're doing that, their defensemen aren't pinching back like they have been. So it's not a bad thing. I mean, that's why we've seen games where they've scored 8 goals against the Colorado Avalanche and 6 goals against Montreal. They've got the offensive ability, but when you're going offense, it seems like the defense is taking a backseat, which is why the other teams use an odd man rushes.
Feels like they can only have one thing going at once. Like, earlier in the season, they had their defense going in a pretty significant way. They had the goal suppression, but they had nothing going offensively.
Yeah.
We're all worried about, okay, are they going to have enough offense to be able to sustain this? And then it's almost flipped on its head now, where it's looking like, okay, they're all offense and they're giving up all of these odd man rushes. I will say, and this sounds kind of strange, if I had to pick one of the two, I think I would actually pick the offense. And the reason why is because of Binnington. Like, I just trust Binner to be able to come up with those saves right now more than I trust the offense to be able to come up with these breakaway opportunities that they're converting. So it sounds strange because we saw this last year and it did not go well, but because you have a better version, in my opinion at least, of Jordan Binnington, I think it's a little more sustainable this way. You do still have to, though, improve a bit. You can't allow what you saw last night. That was on a different level.
And long term, you've got to fix the other side of it, because, like, you're absolutely right. Goaltender can save your bacon on this one, and frankly, it gives your team confidence to try and do a little bit more. But last night was a perfect example. You were doing a little bit more, but you weren't reaping the benefits. You weren't scoring goals. And if you're doing that, you're relying on your goaltender to not give up the goal. And let's also remember, you as a team, you're mentally weak in terms of the other team scores, you're losing. Yeah. So you're playing Russian roulette right there, and I don't know if you want to keep doing that if your team offense can't be as solid as you need it to be.
Somebody on the text line says makes an interesting point, and it is something that I was thinking about last night. I wonder if you had the same thought, Alex. Watching Binnington last night reminded me that the Blues, all they have to do is get into the playoffs, and they've got a chance to be able to do something special just because of him. I totally felt the exact same way. I know this is a retool, this is a rebuild, whatever you want to call it, and I don't think the Blues are going to get deep into the playoffs this year. I would certainly bet against that. I would short their odds. But Jordan Binnington makes you second guess that when you see a performance like that, man. He is just so damn good in these moments, and he was getting chirped by the guy behind the bench, the kid behind the bench last night, or behind the glass last night. He took that personally, very clearly, and then he goes out there and has just this unbelievable performance that reminds everybody of what he's capable of, and he's been that guy for most of the season. Jordan Binnington's been on a heater, dude. It's been like a 3-game stretch a couple of weeks ago where it was like, okay, maybe he's going into a little bit of a lull. And then ever since then, he's responded with just back-to-back really solid performances. So Binner is a guy that you can trust. And it's been better in the regular season than it has been in a really long time for him. And if he sustains this, the Blues are probably going to be a team that is battling for 3rd or 4th in the division, an opportunity to get into the playoffs. And once you get there with him in net, you've got an opportunity to do something special.
Yeah, you absolutely do. I think it's important, though, to say, like, by no means do I think this team's going to go on a deep run because of Jordan Binnington, but I do think you can upset at least one team in a series. And of course, anything can happen, but let's also keep it into perspective. Like, there's a lot of good teams in the NHL to where you're still trying to figure out certain areas of your game.
He's Alex Ferrario. That is Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We'll talk it all over with Jeremy Rutherford, our Blues insider for The Athletic. He joins the show coming up at 12 o'clock. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, another quarterback goes down last night due to injury. Hopefully, this one not as serious as many of the others that we have seen. We'll get into that coming up in NFL Quick Hitters at 11:30. But next, the Cardinals are desperate to move on from one player in particular, and they're finally saying his name out loud. This is not the way that the Cardinals typically operate. What does it signal? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
In the outfield right now, if we were to play tomorrow, it'd likely be Newt, Tommy Edman, and Walker. And so, our fourth outfielder would be Dylan Carlson. But obviously, we're going to go into camp. We're going to see what that looks like. Tyler O'Neill is somebody that we are listening to on trades. Getting a lot of hits on our outfielders, and we're just going to see what that does for us. But overall, we like our everyday club, so we're not really in a market to try to do much there, other than see what we might be able to get for one of those players.
That was John Mozeliak yesterday on MLB Network Radio. Alex, when he mentioned Tyler O'Neill's name, I audibly gasped. Because he never does this. He never says a player out loud. In fact, Jeff Jones tweeted earlier this morning, he can't remember a time when John Mozeliak specifically referenced a player that the team was actively trying to trade. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys can remember somebody that you think he's done this with, please send them in now, because I don't recall him specifically referencing a player publicly in an interview like that, where he says, yeah, this guy is available. Please, somebody come give us an offer that is worthwhile.
Probably did it with Paul DeYoung.
I think it signals the beginning of the end of Tyler O'Neill here in St. Louis. And frankly, I think it signals that they may have made a little bit of a mistake in tendering him a contract to begin with. If you've got to say publicly, or if you're willing to say publicly, yeah, we're listening to any and all offers on this guy, it probably tells us everything we need to know about the offers that are coming in right now for Tyler O'Neill. They ain't great. They're not going to get a whole lot for them. They're willing to trade Tyler O'Neill for just some reliever, it sounds like. Man, you're not getting much from him right now. So you've got $5.5 million potentially committed to him based on his arbitration salary. I still believe a non-tender, in my opinion, was still potentially the right way to go here, but neither here nor there. What was your reaction, Alex, when you heard yesterday John Mozeliak say that on MLB Network Radio?
Honestly, I kind of laughed, because you backed yourself into a corner that you're kind of going to be screwed with this year. Because if you're throwing this out in the open, saying like, yeah, we don't see Tyler O'Neill a part of our ball club and he's available via trade, we're actively searching, that means nobody's answering the phone calls. And now you've given him that money. Like, if you decided to tender a contract to Tyler O'Neill and still wanted to trade him, I would have expected a trade to be there right away. So part of me also wonders that right now the Cardinals are saying this, and if nobody bites, nobody comes in to trade for Tyler O'Neill, they're going to be stuck with Tyler O'Neill for another year for $5.5 million, and he might be your fourth outfielder. But you're on the books for that, right?
If you waive him, you're out of it. You're good, but because you haven't technically given him the contract yet. You have the rights to his contract at the moment.
It's like an RFA in hockey.
Essentially, yeah, that's what it is. Because they're going through their arbitration process.
So you have to mutually agree. Okay, so this is going to work out where Tyler O'Neill is not here, and they're going to try and trade. But frankly, if I'm another team, why would I trade you one of my bullpen arms for Tyler O'Neill? And this is what we talked about yesterday. I don't really think there's upside that teams see with Tyler O'Neill via trade. Now, if you want to sign him because the Cardinals decide not to, sure, I'll give a shot to that guy and see if you do anything in spring training. But if I'm another team, I'm not going to give you a bullpen piece, even if it's a lower-level bullpen piece, for a guy who can't stay healthy, who might be a guy who could be an MVP. There's just no point in it.
It is funny because we talked about during the non-tender deadline about, Woodruff's name was floated around in trades. We were like, why would you not be able to trade Kisner? Well, a lot of those teams go, okay, well, if you're calling me about a player, it probably means he's not a part of your future. Well, they're going to have the same conversation now with most comments about Tyler O'Neill. Now, I think some team may still be able to say, all right, we've had a bullpen arm that we really liked, but he has only been able to piece it together for maybe a year, half a year. Let's just do the flip. Let's swap these guys. They need a change of scenery. I still think a lot of teams will dream on Tyler O'Neill because, look, there is no denying he is a five-tool player, when healthy and right. You don't get an MVP vote for being a bad baseball player. You get it because you have the tools to play like an MVP. For whatever reason, though, he just has not been able to put it all together here in St. Louis. Maybe he goes somewhere where there's less pressure. Maybe a team like the Royals takes a flyer on him and says, hey, we'll take him. We can start him every day. Best case scenario, he plays like an MVP, and then we trade him for even more assets assets
That's the thing.
ourselves.
Team like the Royals, team like the Pirates, like I don't think they're going to trade him within the division, but honestly, I don't even know that they'll care all that much. But like the Nationals, he can go get reunited with Lane Thomas out there. The Rockies, I think he'd be amazing in Colorado. That's like an
Tyler O'Neill for
ideal
Lane Thomas.
situation.
No, he would be terrible in Colorado. Not because the altitude, because that would benefit. No, because that messes with your body so much. O'Neill would be out he may never play a game.
The
in
White
Colorado.
Sox include him in a package for Dylan Cease.
Yeah, sure.
He can't handle altitude.
One of these types of teams. The Angels make a lot of sense for him. One of those teams that's like, hey, man, either a secondary team in a big market or a team that is just not going to have high expectations next year. That's where he needs to go. Just take off the pressure, allow him to go out there, play every single day, get 500 at-bats over the course of the season. If that's the kind of situation that he's in, I think he'll be fine. Now, I think Tampa would even be an interesting spot for him, but they play on turf, so they're disqualified because his knees are not going to hold up, obviously, down there at the Trop. He's only eligible to play 81 games over the course of next season if they were to trade him there. I'm glad, honestly, that this is where we're at. I'm happy that they finally have said it out loud. They've made it known. It is over with Tyler O'Neill here in St. Louis. They know what they're building around next year. The 10 guys that they're building around are obvious in terms of their position players. And now they can go into next season with it. I have no idea if it's going to work or not. But I'm glad they're finally picking, man. Last year, one of the biggest issues, I don't agree with the assessment that their defense fell off because they had too many guys playing too many positions. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think they did have too many guys, though. I think that was part of the issue with them in terms of the regular playing time for players. I think the issue with their defense is Nolan Arenado had a down season defensively. Jordan Walker was horrendous in right field for much of the season, and they didn't have a center fielder until Tommy Edman got out there. So they were trying to figure all these different things out. They never really found one until Tommy Edman finally solidified the defense. I think you're going to be better next year with Edman in center, Newton left, and Walker in right. I think your fourth outfielder going into opening day is going to be Dylan Carlson, barring something unforeseen with a trade there. And now you've got Brendan Donovan moving all over the field the way that he should be used. That is his role, is to be a super utility guy for you. And Nolan Gorman's probably going to be your everyday second baseman. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with Nolan Gorman starting there for you so long as you have plus defenders around him. The problem last year, you didn't have enough plus defenders around him. Alex, the one team that I would watch out for when it comes to Tyler O'Neill is the Cleveland Guardians. Did you see this report yesterday from their beat writer in The Athletic? Mm-hmm. They are in the same place with a bunch of their players that you are with right now here in St. Louis. Here is what they wrote over at The Athletic. The Guardians are waiting for clarity on their TV situation, and they are operating as though they have very limited payroll flexibility. That leaves them with very few avenues for improving a roster that only won 76 games last season. The Guardians sorely need outfield help, and they have a mess currently.
Shouldn't have Tyler O'Neill.
I would say hell no.
Yeah. And they have a mess out there. They know it. Thanks to a rigid payroll, there might not be a simple solution. They then continued when talking about Shane Bieber. Quote, the Guardians could flip Bieber for a couple of prospects or attempt to find a pitcher-starved partner that has a spare outfielder with similarly limited team control. Bieber's trade value has depreciated significantly in recent years, end quote.
Well, I'd call up Cleveland and say, baby, let's have Shane.
I think this is the partner.
Yeah.
Go up there, and whether it's one of their 150 different relievers or Shane Bieber, try to find a deal that works for both sides. Those are the two partners that have always made sense. They have like 35 home runs from their outfielders in the past year and a half. Tyler O'Neill can help you, man.
Imagine what you're going to get in those 20 games from Tyler O'Neill, Cleveland.
The same production. You can at least dream on upside there. They have nobody right now. They have no payroll available. Like, go ahead and make your salary dump. Bring Shane Bieber here to St. Louis. He adds a little bit of upside to your rotation. He fits into the mix of a bunch of different guys that throw 180 innings a year.
Seems like a good dude, too.
Yeah, he certainly fits in that regard. I'm sure the Cardinals would re-sign him for 12 years. He makes all the sense in the world here in St. St. Louis and send Tyler O'Neill up to Cleveland, where he'll be under the radar. He'll play for a team that might be in contention, but there's no expectations for him there. That is a perfect spot for Tyler O'Neill to land, and a team that is very clearly desperate, as you are, to move on from Tyler O'Neill.
That's the best return you could ask for Tyler O'Neill, because frankly, I don't see how you get anything near the level of Shane Bieber. And if you decide to go bullpen arm, I frankly would go Shane Bieber, because as much as I think your bullpen needs help, I think you could spend some money in free agency on the bullpen help. But you go get another starter, I would take advantage of that opportunity for a Tyler O'Neill.
I have no interest in Bieber. I would just take a bullpen arm. Give me a bullpen arm. I'll give you O'Neill. We'll
James
shake hands.
Karinchak, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm in. 100% in.
Can I tell you a little bit about this individual?
Why don't you want Shane Bieber?
He can't.
You just said Tyler O'Neill got MVP votes, and you don't just get those. This guy's got MVP votes in 3 of his 5
Position
seasons.
players can get back to that level. A pitcher that when I read this piece, they were like,
got Cy Young votes 2 years ago.
when I read this piece on The Athletic, this is basically what they said about him. Yeah, his fastball velo is down, and he doesn't have a curveball
So
anymore.
you'd rather have Lance Lynn pitching in the season for you over Shane Bieber? You're insane. You are insane, sir.
Shane Bieber is not worth bringing here to St. Louis.
If they don't go that route, if they decide to go bullpen arm instead, a name that I would monitor is James Karinchak. And the reason why is because he has no idea where the ball is going. But
oh, that's always good.
When opposing players swing at it, and they do a lot, they typically miss. He is averaging 13 strikeouts per 9 innings in his major league career. Here's the one slight issue. He's also walking 5 batters per 9 innings so far in his major league career. So 1 out of every 7 guys that walks up to the plate, Alex, they get on base with a free pass, and that's not ideal. However,
Goody.
opposing hitters are batting 170 against him in his major league career. They can't hit him, and they swing and miss a whole hell of a lot. So if you can figure out a way to get him not even a lot of control, a little bit of control, this guy could fit into your like 8th or 9th inning mix going into next season. I don't know if that will ever happen for him, but it's worth a flyer based on an opportunity to trade Tyler O'Neill there. He also has 3 years of club control remaining. So even if it takes more than just Tyler O'Neill to acquire this individual, I am all in, man. 28 years old, will be 29 next year. Got great stuff, big time velocity. This is the guy that I would be looking to acquire from the Cleveland Guardians if they are willing to take on Tyler O'Neill and whatever it is that comes with him. Coming up next, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters, including another NFL quarterback that goes down last night on Monday Night Football. And does anybody want to win the AFC right now? It sure doesn't feel that way. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends out at Ted Drew's famous frozen custard off of Chippewa. It's Christmas tree season. If you don't have yours up yet, well, then perfect opportunity for you and the family to block out some time this weekend, and get on out to Ted Drew's and buy the frozen custard, but then shop, of course, all of their Christmas trees. They've got balsam firs, Fraser firs, Scotch pines. They'll help you find the perfect tree for your home. They'll help you secure it to the vehicle, and they'll help you get it back to your house. They also got a variety of holiday greeneries as well. You've got different wreaths, you've got homemade bows, and pine roping too. On top of that, you could get the frozen custard, whatever flavor you want, and you can even see Santa Claus, who's going to be there this Sunday. So if you haven't got the chance to take your kiddos out there, I can guarantee you my wife and I are going to be taking our girls on Sunday to see Santa from 12 to 2 at the Ted Drew's gift shop. It's across the parking lot at the famous frozen custard destination off of Chippewa. So go check them out and find out why Ted Drew's really is good guys and gals.
Tara Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Auto. Plex Blues beat the Vegas Golden Knights last night in overtime 2-1, and they'll be back in action tomorrow when they host Vegas. And we'll have pregame coverage starting at 7 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey joins Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 8. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find a road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters. Alex, the update is now available. According to Doug Peterson, Trevor Lawrence has a high ankle sprain. Quote, everything looks stable. They're going to see how it goes this week. I don't know if I would want to play him this weekend against Cleveland. Now, quarterbacks have done this in the past. We saw Patrick Mahomes last year play a week after he sprained his ankle. High ankle sprains are typically for wide receivers, running backs, etc., like a 6-week type of an injury. I don't know that I would push this against Cleveland or Baltimore. I would try to get him a couple of weeks off of his ankle if possible. The problem for Jacksonville is they are in a very tight playoff race right now. They're 8-4. The Steelers, the Cleveland Browns, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Houston Texans are all 7-5, nipping at their heels. The Texans, as of today, would be out of the playoffs at 7-5. Good thing for the Jaguars, they have the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Colts because they beat them both times this season. So you have a little bit of wiggle room, but not a whole lot. I would try 2 weeks, see where you're at that point. Even if you lose these next 2 games, you got Tampa, Carolina, Tennessee down the stretch. You should be able to win all those 3 games. If you get to 11 wins on the season, I think you'll get into the playoffs. That's probably the way they'll play this. How would you feel about it if you're a Jaguars fan today, though?
I think if I'm a Jaguars fan, I want Trevor Lawrence to play. I mean, I know it's a high ankle sprain and I want him to be healthy, but I mean, the next 2 weeks could show your demise in a playoff run, especially if the teams around you have success. And frankly, if I'm a Jaguars fan, the backup is C.J. Beathard. I don't feel comfortable with that play. And what their Christian Kirk, I think, is out.
He's out for a while. He's got a core muscle injury, according to
your best chance to win is going to be Trevor Lawrence playing. And I know it's a high ankle sprain, but if I'm a Jaguars fan, I want him to play. If I'm the Jaguars, no way in hell he's playing.
He's definitely not playing at Cleveland for me. Baltimore, we'll see. Depending on how he's feeling and everything, I would listen to it because it is against a good team. You're still going up into the, like you said, you're still fighting for your playoff life still. Cleveland, you can beat them with your backup quarterback. Like, let's just be honest. They're not a good football team right now, even though Joe Flacco did look great. And I saw a stat today where he had, I think it was like 10 or 6 throws over 10 air yards, which was like the most since like 2017, which is just incredible, especially since they have Deshaun Watson. But I would definitely say out this week at Cleveland, play it by ear. If you beat Cleveland, then I think you let them sit against Baltimore. You lose to Cleveland, though, then it becomes more up in the air for me.
They asked Peterson about them signing Nick Foles. He said they haven't talked about it.
Yeah, no, of course not.
Bring him back.
If he's going to be out only a week or 2, this is a situation where you don't need to bring anybody in. Beathard is not good, but
he can
carry you through
Nick
a couple
Foles
of weeks.
is better than Beathard.
I don't know that he is, man. Last time that we saw Nick Foles, he was atrocious.
You know who's available, though? Tim Boyle. He just got cut by the Jets.
Yeah, they're saying our best chance to win is Brett Rypien.
Can we just be honest? They should just play a whole game without a quarterback and just have Breece Hall take snaps.
I mean, at this point, you got to try something different because what you're doing is not working. You're banging your head against the wall repeatedly, and it's going incredibly poorly.
Zach's out due to concerns of health, or also known as being scared.
Who is the favorite in the AFC right now? Because this conference
not your Chiefs,
stinks, dude. The Jaguars now have question marks at quarterback with Trevor Lawrence. I think he'll be fine once we get to the playoffs, but you got to get there to be able to get in. The Steelers are going to be without their starting quarterback. It sounds like for a while. I think he had surgery. Did you guys see that yesterday? Cleveland is without Deshaun Watson. Indianapolis has Gardner Minshew. The Houston Texans don't have a defense. They opted out for the season, apparently. The Broncos have been fine lately, but over the weekend, they looked like the same old Broncos. Bengals, nice win. Nice win last night against the Jaguars. Do you trust that that's going to continue long term?
About as much as I trust Beathard.
Bills are 6-6. They have been up and down and erratic. Who's the team? Who's the team that you trust in this stupid conference?
I think it's Miami, and I only trust them because of Tyreek Hill.
I mean, but we've seen what they look like against contenders. They look terrible every time they play against a real team. 48-20 against Buffalo, 31-17 against Philly, 21-14
none
against
of it
KC.
matters. The AFC's not winning the Super Bowl this year. It's just going to be a free-for-all of whoever gets there. There are 3 clear-cut options that are winning the Super Bowl, and they're all in the NFC.
I think
But who gets there from the AFC?
I think it's Baltimore.
Baltimore or Miami.
I would say Baltimore because of what BK said about Miami. Like, when they have gone up against good teams, they don't look the same. They look almost scared, almost shell-shocked that they're there. So I would say Baltimore. And I know, like, they weren't that impressive in L.A. this past weekend, or whatever that game was, when they won 20-10. But I just seem to trust them right now. Lamar's been playing well. I think they found something in that Mitchell kid that's that running back now for them. And OBJ had been playing better, but his shoulders kind of bothering him again.
But I mean, who's Baltimore
Flowers? I mean, they beat
Detroit. That was the game
Detroit's
that
been
is
kind of.
Detroit's the game that makes everybody believe in them. Like, that's it. If we're just being honest, because remember, Alex, we had said all year prior to that game, can't trust them, can't trust them, and then they beat the hell.
But that was the start of the downfall for Detroit.
You're 100% correct.
And they lost to Cleveland. Yeah. I mean, I don't trust Baltimore either.
They had really good performances against Detroit and Seattle, and everybody bought in based on those 2 performances. I have not seen them go on the road yet so far this year and play well.
If you could take Baltimore's defense with Miami's offense, welcome to my Super Bowl champion. But
or the Chiefs prior to this weekend on defense. I don't know what happened to them on Sunday. I can't explain it. Their defense looked like they had opted out of the game. I think a lot of it was the injuries. Like, they had 3 dudes that are legitimately impactful pieces for them that went down to injury in that game. I don't trust this Chiefs team at all at this point in time. The problem is, for the rest of the AFC, I don't trust any of them, man. I don't trust the Ravens. I don't trust the Dolphins at all. The Dolphins remind me so much of watching a Lincoln Riley-led college football team. Like,
True.
You put them up against some schmucks from the Big 12, they're going to win that game 48-10 every time. You put them up against Georgia, against Bama, against Oregon, like the legit contenders in college football, they lose every single time because they had no physicality to them. That's the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins against some of these lower-level teams, they're going to look awesome. And then you put them up against Baltimore, against KC, maybe even against Cincinnati. I don't know, man. They just are not a team that I can trust. So as of today, I'd take Baltimore. I have 0 level of confidence in that whatsoever. Somebody's going to come out of this AFC. I think that might end up surprising.
Every team in the AFC is worse than the top 3 teams in the NFC.
Agreed.
It's the best way I look at that.
So let's go over to the NFC real quick as we continue with NFL Quick Hitters on 101 ESPN. Did the 49ers announce this weekend with their dominant performance in Philly that they are officially the team to beat in the NFC and in the NFL?
I think so, because Dallas, the same I can say about the Baltimore Ravens, they haven't looked that great against the top teams, with the exception of that Philly game. It's pretty competitive, but Philly just wiped the floor, got wiped up by San Francisco. So, yeah, San Francisco just established they're going to be the team to beat with all of those playmakers on both the offense and the defensive side.
Yeah, when they're healthy, they're the best team in the NFL. And they proved that this weekend, because not only did you beat Philadelphia on the road, beat the living crap out of Philadelphia on the road. So I think when you look at that San Francisco team, their midseason struggles, it's obvious now. And look, I still don't believe that Purdy's a game breaker, but he's a great game manager, and when he has all the weapons around him.
The NFL MVP odds would disagree with you.
Yeah, as we've talked about, the NFL MVP this year is going to go to somebody that's not deserving of it. So, exactly. I think they're clearly the best. I think they're clearly the best team. I think Philadelphia is kind of in that second tier with like Baltimore, Detroit, all those other teams.
As of today, Dak and Brock Purdy are tied for the favorite to win the NFL MVP, according to the FanDuel Sportsbook. Both of them at 3-1. Jalen Hurts is still at plus 350, 3.5 to 1. And then you've got Mahomes at plus 650.
That's amazing to me.
You've got Tua and Lamar Jackson at plus 950. And then finally, you get to a non-quarterback, and I believe the most deserving MVP in the NFL so far this year, Tyreek Hill at 15 to 1.
Yeah, that's ridiculous that he's that far down there, that you put 3 guys that I would say Tyreek Hill has been clear-cut better than. He's below them.
Yeah, there's not an MVP quarterback in the league so far this year. If you wanted to look for one, I think it is Dak Prescott. He's the closest thing to it so far. Man, Brock Purdy's been really good. Brock Purdy's weapons have been the reason why he has been as good as he has so far this year. Deebo Samuel carved up the Philadelphia Eagles over the weekend. That wasn't a Brock Purdy performance. That was a Deebo Samuel is better than everybody else on the field kind of
That was a
performance.
system quarterback. Just put the ball in his hand and he'll do the rest.
Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll talk to Jeremy Rutherford, our Blues insider for The Athletic. Want to get his thoughts and put in perspective what we saw yesterday from Jordan Binnington. JR will give us his thoughts on that coming up at 12 o'clock. But next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
This holiday season, I'm going big. Big parties, big gifts, big family get-togethers. And when I'm hungry, I go straight to McDonald's for a big beefy triple cheeseburger. It's one of the best burgers ever with 3 100% pure beef patties topped with tangy pickles, chopped onions, and 2 slices of melty American cheese. Best of all, McDonald's Big Triple Cheeseburger has a small price, just $2.99. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Prices and participation may vary, cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Available at most restaurants in this area. Comparison of McDonald's classic burgers to prior burgers.
Donate a car to Goodwill, running or not, and they'll pick it up for free. You'll get a tax receipt plus 4 tickets to a Cardinals game next year. For more information or to donate online, visit mersgoodwill.org. Give hope, give local, give Goodwill. .101 ESPN has your chance to win a pair of tickets to the 64th Annual St. Louis Baseball Writers Dinner on Sunday evening, January 14th at the Missouri Athletic Club downtown.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Let's start with this from the 314. Guys, who do you think will end up as the number 1 seed in the AFC? As of today, it would be the Dolphins, with the win percentage over the Ravens in conference games. They are 6-2 in conference games. The Ravens are 6-3 in conference games. Alex, how do you think it will finish, though?
I personally think it'll be the Ravens at the top. I don't know what the Dolphins have. Oh, no, the Dolphins have a super easy schedule. They got the Titans, Commanders, Jets.
The Dolphins?
Yeah.
The Dolphins have the Titans, the Jets, the Cowboys,
they just beat
the
Commanders.
Ravens, and the Bills.
I think it's going to be that.
Those last 3 games are tough.
That
man.
Ravens,
Dallas,
Dolphins
Baltimore,
game.
and Buffalo.
That Ravens Miami game is going to be the one that dictates the number 1 seed, and I would probably give the upper hand to Baltimore because they'll be on home field. Baltimore's got San Francisco though.
Yeah, Baltimore's got a tough schedule. At Jacksonville, we'll see what happens with Trevor Lawrence there. That's in a couple of weeks, and then at San Francisco and home against Miami.
We're just going to overlook the fact they're losing this weekend to the Rams. Are we really just going to do that?
Correct.
I can't believe he just skipped over that.
The Rams, they don't have their best
Can we
quarterback
talk
anymore.
about the Chiefs' remaining schedule? I don't know if it matters after what we obviously just saw from Green Bay. But Buffalo,
loss.
Maybe.
No.
At New England, that should be a win. Home against Vegas, that should be a win. Home against Cincinnati, should be a win, but we'll see. And then at the Chargers. They should win out, conceivably. But
they
at
should
this point,
beat the Packers.
They should have won out from the Packers game.
Totally agree with you guys. And they did not look like a good football team on Sunday. So I can't put my trust in them at all. But the schedules that remain from the Ravens and the Dolphins, I think, are both a little tougher than what the Chiefs have remaining on their schedule. And the Chiefs are 6-1 in the conference so far this year. So they will have a tiebreaker, and they beat the Dolphins head-to-head. So if they have the same record as the Dolphins, they would have the head-to-head tiebreaker over them. If they have the same record as the Ravens, they should have, at that point, the head-to-head record over the Ravens because of the conference schedule. So I think the Chiefs are still in play, but I would agree. I think that it'll be the Ravens as of today.
Yeah, that's where I am. And I think Alex is right. I think it comes down to that game on New Year's Eve against the Dolphins. Winner of that probably gets the 1 seed, would be my guess.
From the 314, guys, if the Cardinals were to trade Tyler O'Neill for Shane Bieber and then add a little bit to the bullpen, what would your offseason grade be for the Cardinals? So they get Shane Bieber, and then they add a couple of middling bullpen arms. How do you feel?
I'd give it a B, maybe B+, because I think you've made your rotation really look good, and I just hope those middling bullpen arms are going to be successful. I don't think you got the guy that's better than Sonny Gray, but you definitely, in my opinion, have 2 guys better than Miles Michaelis.
I would go, if we're saying middling arms, I'm going to say that those guys aren't considered
like
high
$5
leverage.
million relievers.
Yeah, I don't know.
So Eric
I'll
Fetty.
give him credit.
He's just available.
He's apparently going to New York.
No,
Did you see
it's
that?
an unspecified team. I thought it was St. Louis.
The Mets are connected, apparently, which is odd.
The Mets and I think the White Sox were the other team.
I would say B- on the fringe of a C+. To me, you didn't get 2 guys ahead of Michaelis. I don't think Bieber's better than Michaelis. I think he is Michaelis at this point in his career because he doesn't have a swing and miss. His fastball velo is down. And as that article said today in The Athletic, he doesn't have a curveball now. So what I'm hearing is a pitcher that's losing all of his weapons. It's going to make like $12 million. Yeah, I think it would be like a B- offseason.
I think B. B would be about what I would put it. You can't get an A because you didn't get the 2 starters that are better than Michaelis, and that was the goal of the offseason. So how do you guys feel on that, by the way? I didn't hear what you had to say about it yesterday. Has your opinion at all changed on the Cardinals' interest or likelihood of acquiring Glasnow, Cease, Mariner starter, et cetera?
I personally am a little bit more skeptical about it now because if there's other teams going into the bidding war, I think the Cardinals are going to have to get to the point that they don't want to go in terms of trading for one of those guys.
Yeah, I still think they could make a Glasnow deal happen, but I think it would take a Burleson-type player in that deal, and based on most comments, I don't think they want to move anybody outside of O'Neill on the active roster, so I don't think they're going to do it.
I think the Rays are going to connect with the Mariners. I think Randy Arozarena is going to be the outfielder that they trade for, and they're going to get a pitcher in return.
Randy A.
The Cardinals are going to get
No,
Randy
the Mariners.
Arozarena?
I think the Mariners are going to try to acquire somebody.
Mariners are going to get Juan Soto. The Cardinals are going to go get Randy.
I think Soto
Arozarena.
ends up in New York. I know that the talks are dead right now, quote unquote. We know how this goes. 2 days from now, they'll pick him back up and be like, "Oh, you guys You said you wanted him? No.
By the way, I just love Ken Rosenthal when he just takes shots at teams. I love how he was like, yeah, there's 2 prospects that the Padres want, and the Yankees are too stubborn that they just broke off talks. Just pick one and build a package around the rest of them.
It doesn't have to be as hard as these teams make it out to be. But, yeah, I think the Mariners, I think they will trade one of their starters, but I think it's probably going to be going to Tampa Bay. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll get into a game of Bet It or Forget It. You give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it. But next, Jeremy Rutherford will put in context what we witnessed last night from Jordan Binnington. Where did that performance rank among his regular season games? Might be at the top. We'll talk to JR about it next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Jeremy Rutherford. He's the Blues insider for The Athletic. He joins us each and every week here on BK and Ferrario. JR, how you doing today, man?
Happy noontime, boys. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you on today.
It's noon. I'm exhausted.
I want to get your perspective, JR, on what we witnessed last night. I genuinely think that's one of the best individual performances that I've seen in a regular season game by a Blues player since I moved here to St. Louis in 2016. I couldn't believe what we witnessed from Jordan Binnington. From your perspective, how would you put that in context, what we saw last night from Binner?
It was a masterpiece, BK. It really was. And I agree with Alex. We taped the Last Minute Blues podcast this morning, and Alex and I were both in agreement. I think it's the best performance by Jordan Binnington going back to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup. And you could say that because of the circumstance of that situation, Stanley Cup on the line, and he did play amazingly, right? But last night, for a regular season game, the way he played against the Vegas Golden Knights. I just got a text from Jesse Granger, who covers the Golden Knights for The Athletic, and he said Binnington was unreal last night. We're going to write a piece together, collaborate. It'll be up at The Athletic tomorrow on Jordan Binnington with the two teams playing tomorrow night. But I say best performance since Game 7 Stanley Cup.
I'm with you. And part of the reason that I felt that way, JR, is that Game 7 against Boston came at St. Louis in waves. But let's also not forget how good the Blues were offensively. They'd get their sustained zone time. They had the push. Binnington wasn't peppered with shots from start to finish. Last night, there was no opportunity to breathe for Jordan Binnington. And frankly, that kind of has been the MO for him this season. And Joel Hofer, there's no opportunity to breathe with this Blues team.
So many 2-on-1s. What do you have, 5 or 6 of them in the first period alone? And the high danger chances, I lost track of them. I was refreshing Natural Stat Trick all night long. It was going from 9 to 12 to 15 to 16. It was through the roof last night on the high danger chances. And not only that, but how casual he was making them. That shot, I think it was the backhand, was a Cotter early on. I can't remember, but it was a save that Jordan Binnington just made like, oh, yeah, buddy. Okay, you thought you were going to score on that one. Yeah, right. Okay, let's have a face-off.
That's the one for me. It was the glove save on Cotter, and then it was the poke check on the breakaway that he had on Jack Eichel. And then on the power play that the Blues just, let Vegas have like 5 high-danger scoring chances on, that save. Those 3 for me, I was like, yep, Binnington's locked in.
Yeah, and I agree with what BK said earlier, is the game's not even remotely close to going to overtime without Jordan Binnington last night. So the Blues had some good moments. I do feel like they played a decent game overall, but still playing a little loose, and they had to rely on Jordan Binnington last night.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because I find their structure to be an interesting conversation. Earlier in the season, it was, man, the Blues can't score because they are too committed to this structure. And now it's, do the Blues need to get back to being committed to the structure once again? In their last 10 games, they've allowed 3.8 goals per game, which is 30th in the league, JR. And that is despite having some really good goaltending in this stretch. What are you seeing in terms of the looseness that is taking place within their game right now?
Yeah, I think, and let me kind of set this thing up here a little bit. I think when you first start the season, everybody is dotting their I's, crossing their T's in terms of the structure. Listen to the coaching staff. Let's play the system. And I think once you get a little more comfortable with it as a team, I know some of the individual defensemen had played it before, but once you get comfortable as a team, okay, now we got it. Now maybe we can, I don't want to say cheat, but make this play that maybe we probably shouldn't be making, but we want to be aggressive. We want to create some transition. We want to create some offense. And so I think maybe a little bit of that seeps in, but also Craig Berube touched on this, guys, I think yesterday. He said that they got to kill plays and do a better job at killing plays. You saw that in Arizona. Torrey Krug goes in the corner, tries to make a play, doesn't kill it. Justin Falk's behind the net, so they vacated the slot area and lost the kill in the corner. And I think there's a few more of those that we're seeing the past couple of weeks that we didn't see early in the season. So I still think that it's doable. I think that they can play that way. They've shown us, but I think that in terms of why this is happening, those are a couple of the reasons.
It's the ever popular follow-up question to that, JR. Is that a coaching issue or is that a player issue?
No, I mean, the coaching, and this isn't to take anyone off the hook, like I always say, and, things can be a coaching issue for sure. I mean, there's things that pop up that are. But I think that they're teaching the same way that they were at the start of the season. I think that it just becomes situation where you want to push the envelope a little bit. You want to be aggressive. Like I've talked to several Blues players this year where they're continue to say we got to create more offense. So I think the only way to do that is if you're on your toes defensively and maybe early on in the season you're protecting that slot like all hell, but then you see a puck loose in the corner, you want to jump on it, and it leads to a slot shot again. So I just think that the players know that they want to create some offense, and I think sometimes maybe that leads to a little bit of missed assignment.
JR, how much longer do you think Jakub Vrana should be expected to be around this team?
I can't imagine that he makes it through the year. I guess the problem is, what is the value there? And, if you're talking about taking a flyer on a trade just to move the player out, then I guess the Blues could consider that, put him on waivers. I don't know that he'd get picked up. Can this be salvaged? I guess it could. I don't think so. I just don't think he's the style that they want to play. I was thinking about this yesterday. You wonder about, is it a mistake? Was it a mistake? I don't think it was. I think that the offensive upside and that you were getting him for pennies on the dollar, you knew about the reputation and you knew that could crop up, but you also have some other players that you can put in the lineup if it wasn't working out. And I think we've probably gotten to that point. The one key sticking point with me is, I talked to Vrana, a month ago, and he said, what type of player I am, and then recently he said to Matt DeFranks of the Post-Dispatch, he said that, I can only control what I can control. Well, that's not necessarily true. You can control how you play, and if you play well and do the things they're coaching you to, you'll be in the lineup. And the way I see it, some of the things that he's done in the games that he's been in, he's not controlling what he can control.
So, Jerry, I feel like the Cardinals learned a lesson this year with the way that the whole Wilson Contreras situation went down. Now, that's obviously to a much different degree. They brought in Wilson Contreras to be their prized free agent to replace Yadier Molina. That's different than taking a flyer on a guy like Jakub Vrana. But we've seen this a couple of times now with the Blues, where they bring in a guy that's very much a offensive-minded player and doesn't think a whole lot about the defensive side of the puck. Is there a lesson to be learned there in terms of what they're going to do during this retool or rebuild, or the players that they go out there and acquire moving forward?
Yeah, it's fair. I think, though, that we're in a little bit of a different time right now, like you just touched on, retool. What type of player are they going out there for? Maybe in reflection of bringing him in and it not working out at this point, maybe you shy away from that type of player in the future. But look, Doug Armstrong was looking for some offense. They needed to add to that top nine. They knew they were losing Tarasenko. They were losing perhaps Ryan O'Reilly. They lost David Perron. They needed to bring in somebody with that offensive touch. Vrana definitely has it, but you have to bring some defense to the table. I mean, I said this recently, I'll say it again, is if you just keep throwing Vrana out there and he's not paying any attention to the defensive zone, how can you get on Jordan Kyrou for not playing defense? And there might be some people who say, okay, quit getting on these guys, just let them go do their thing offensively. Well, the whole thing falls apart. You can't have two or three guys not paying attention. This is a system. This isn't just throwing guys out there individually. So, hey, if you let these guys free, could they score a few more goals? They could, but I don't think you're going to win the team over in terms of how you want to play and how all guys are held accountable.
JR, I know this is purely a speculation standpoint, but if you were to put yourself in Doug Armstrong's shoes with the players that they have in the system, the Dvorsky's, the Snuggeruds who have been performing well, does this team in their next step seem like they're still searching for more offense, or are they searching for somebody to take a stranglehold on one of those top spots on defense?
They do have some really talented offense coming in. At least that's the way it projects. I mean, these players, when you talk about a Dvorsky and a Snuggerud, look good. This is 19th year covering the team. There's been guys coming in. Patrick Berglund comes in. Paul Kariya says he's going to score 100 points in the league one day, and obviously that didn't happen. So, there's times where you look at these guys and you think they've got it, and then they don't. But, I mean, as we sit here today, it looks like those guys have got it. So I think for now you're probably established in terms of guys coming up through the pipeline. Now, in a couple years, the cap's going to go up. You're going to have some contracts off the books. You can sign a free agent, make a trade, do whatever you want to offensively. I think the emphasis for me is going to be what's the future of this defense hold. Alex, because you don't have a lot of top 4 defensive prospects coming into the system. And then also, what's it going to look like with a Torrey Krug? Is he still going to be here? What's going to happen with a Scott Perinovich? Is Tyler Tucker going to make the cut? So I think if you're looking for, how you're going to improve this team or what's it going to look like in a couple of years, to me, the bigger question is on defense.
He's Jeremy Rutherford. You can find his work over at The Athletic, and be sure to follow him on Twitter as well, at JP Rutherford. JR, appreciate the time as always, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today. We'll talk with you again next week.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Did you almost cry there when you? Hey man, he'll be back next Tuesday.
Next week.
He'll be back on Tuesday, man. He comes every week with us.
I didn't want him to go.
All right, buddy. It's all right, man.
Still recovering a little bit from a cold. You guys know how this works. I come back from vacation, 100%
sick. Frankly, I'm surprised you're here.
When I get back.
Didn't think you'd be here. I thought T-Bone and I had today locked down, and you'd be back tomorrow feeling 100% better.
I wasn't sure yesterday if I was going to be in here today, if we're being totally candid about it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say to that point, and I asked that question for a little bit of I wanted them to go one direction with it, because that's where I feel like as well. We've talked about this. I really feel like that if you're the Blues, this is the season to go after one of those defensemen. Because as JR is talking about, maybe when some of these contracts come off the book, absolutely, you open up some cap space. But do you have the assets available to you to trade for one of those guys if it's available? Because I don't know what the free agent market's going to look like. Guys get locked up pretty quickly. Yeah. This Noah Hannafin thing is just sitting in front of you. And Luke Horak and I were texting last night. He's going to do a piece with the Calgary Flames guy in the next couple of weeks. And the Calgary Flames guy said, he doesn't know what's going to happen. He said if Noah Hannafin's willing to sign an extension, that Calgary just might be willing to trade him for whatever they can get in that scenario. You've got 2 second-round picks this season, 2 third-round picks this season at the draft. You need to get somebody in place on that defense so you can start steering. The ship feels like it's stuck in a tidal wave, and it's just spinning around and around. You need to find something to steer it in the right direction, and I think a defenseman who you can say for the next 5 years, our top pair that's going to be eating 26 minutes a night, it's Noah Hannafin and Colton Parayko, and everything else will figure itself out.
It's like being an NFL team not having a quarterback. Everything in your organization is about finding that guy.
Yeah.
That's what it becomes is, okay, if you don't have the guy in place right now, how do we get that guy in place? Teams around the league are doing that. Now, the Blues, it's a little different because the quarterback for them almost is their goaltender. So they have that piece in place. But once you have a quarterback in place, now you got to get a number 1 wide receiver. And we see this around the league as well, right? Where you've got the Kansas City Chiefs, who have a tight end, but they don't have a number 1 receiver.
They had one, too.
And they are searching far and wide to be able to go out there and acquire one. And if you don't get it, I don't think you can win in a meaningful way. The Blues right now don't have that top pair defensively. I think Parayko's been pretty good.
He has
so far. But you need somebody to play with him. And Letty's just not the guy. Yeah. He's not. He never was. He's never going to be. And that's okay. We can admit as much. We don't have to try to force this square peg into the round hole repeatedly. He's been a solid third pair defensively. Yeah. That's what he's going to be. And yeah, you overpaid for it. Yeah, you gave him a no-trade clause. It is what it is. It's a sunk cost. Now you got to move on. Noah Hannafin is exactly the type of player that this team is looking for, but you got to make the deal. You got to find a way to acquire the player, and that's where it gets really difficult.
You go big picture, like Doug Armstrong always does, and big picture of this organization, I see the pieces coming up in my forward spot. I see the Snuggeroos and the Dvorskys and guys that are there for me. I see some of the players in my minor league system on defense, and there's nobody that screams that guy. Whereas this is a 26-year-old player that's standing for you. This might be a bigger pedestal than the Jamie Alexiak pedestal I stood on for the longest time, because this is the most ideal scenario in front of you. And if you're not able to pull this one off, you might still be searching for that other guy for a long time.
The one other thing to add to our conversation, to wrap it in a bow real quick with JR, is what we were talking about with Jakub Vrana. I do think there's a lesson to be learned here. And the lesson is you just can't bring in these offensive-minded players here to St. Louis. They don't fit. Whether that's right, wrong, indifferent, however you feel about it, we saw what this looked like when they brought in Hoffman. It didn't work. We saw what it looked like now when they're bringing in Jakub Vrana. It's not working. If you're going to bring in the middle 6 type of players, they've got to be like Kasperi Kapanen. They've got to be like Brandon Saad. You don't have to be a great defensive player, but you got to at least give effort. You got to try on that side of the puck. Even with Jordan Kyrou, there's been times where it doesn't seem to be working with him. This year, I think he's been better defensively. I think he's trying, at least this year. And you're seeing him getting better opportunities at times because of that. But I don't think this is a team that can take chances on those purely offensive-driven players anymore because of what we've seen. It's failed just too many times at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they've tried this. Certain guys can play in this system like Jordan Kyrou, but Jordan Kyrou has made massive steps towards fixing his defensive woes. Guys like Mike Hoffman, guys like Jakub Vrana, we know this. The team is built as a group, not one or two individuals. And if you're not going to be a part of that, then it's just not going to work out here.
Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Better to Forget It here on 101 ESPN.
Ooh, hoo, hoo, hoo.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You give us a scenario, we will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on 101 ESPN. All right, boys, let's start out with this. Bet it or forget it, Dylan Carlson is on the Cardinals opening day roster. I found it interesting yesterday that John Mozeliak made it very clear. Tommy Edman is this team's starting center fielder, and as of today, Dylan Carlson would be their fourth outfielder.
I'll say bet it. Unfortunately, T-Bone, I think that might be the RIP for Richie Palacios. Oh. If his middle name starts with an I, man, that would be perfect.
He's got options, right?
I'm sure.
Options to go elsewhere because the Cardinals ain't bringing him back. But I'll say bet this one. Dylan Carlson's going to be on this team. It sounds like they didn't get what they thought they were going to get for a guy who can only hit one side of the plate and hasn't been healthy enough for you. And so the Cardinals will be like, well, bleep it. We'll run it back with him as the fourth outfielder. And if he plays well, that's a bigger gift for us, and we could use him in center field at times.
Can confirm Richie Palacios can be sent down next year, so he'll be around. He'll get opportunities. So
sure he will.
Limited.
Sure he will. RIP. Richie Ignatius Palacios.
I'll bet it because I think they don't want to give up on Carlson just yet. Now, having him in the fourth outfield role means they're good up on him as a starter, but I think they can make it work with him, and he's kind of a emergency. If you have to have him, he can play center field for you. And you hope, because he's down working at drive line now, hitting from the left side of the plate. So their hope would be he gets better against righties. I'll bet this. I bet he's still here on opening day.
I'm going to bet it as well. I don't know how many opportunities he's going to get, but I think the biggest reason why they're keeping him is just as it's not so much insurance on Tommy Edman, it's insurance on Mason Wynn. The more I hear people around the Cardinals talk, the more I wonder if they're not totally convinced that Mason Wynn is ready as a hitter for the major leagues just yet. And if you have Mason Wynn at the bottom of your order and Tommy Edman in the lineup, how do they feel about that? I don't know. At the bottom of the order, that might be a lot of light-hitting middle infielder types.
But is my 1 through 7 built like a brick-ish house?
Hopefully.
Because if I'm not trading Nolan Gorman, I don't think I really care about 8, 9. 1 through 7 should be doing all the damage.
I'm totally with you, and I would have no issue with having 2 guys in there that are for defense. Hell, you look at the Astros lineup, they had that. At the bottom of their order, they had guys that were in there purely for defensive performance. There's nothing wrong with that, but if you have a guy that is a net negative defensive or offensively in a significant way, it might be too much to make up for with his defensive performance. So Mason Wynn at the end of last year really struggled offensively. He's going to have a good spring and then at least a capable start to the season to stay up with the big league club long term. And if he doesn't, that might be where you see him get sent back down to AAA, kind of like what we saw last year with Jordan Walker, get a little bit of time down there, come back up after you've got your confidence back. But while he's down, I could see them going to Dylan Carlson as their center fielder. But I am betting it. I do think he will be with the team on opening day. Alex, what do you got?
Better to forget it, guys, going down this Noah Hannafin rabbit hole. Better to forget it, a likely or realistic trade option for Noah Hannafin. Let's say he's under contract. They sign him and they trade him. Is Zachary Bolduc and a second-round draft pick?
I don't think that's enough. I think you'd have to give up a little bit more. I wonder what the shine is on the Bolduc prospect status right now. Because what's he?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's been a slow start in the minors, but it's, 19 years old, playing from the Q to the minors. So, I think the shot is what makes it a shiny new toy.
Yeah.
4 goals in 21 games.
Not enough. 10 points, 21 games. He's a -2, so he's rebounding a little bit. Mm-hmm. I would say that's probably not enough, but I don't know. I don't know what the value is for Noah Hannafin right now around the league. I would say you probably got to. I think you would have to give up a first round.
I think that gets it done if he doesn't sign an extension.
That's fair.
And you do that, but if the Blues do it, you're taking a real risk in terms of not getting them locked up. Now, maybe the framework's already in place, as Pierre LeBrun reported that it was kind of around a 7-year deal for $7.5 million or an 8-year deal at $7.5 million. Maybe the framework's in place, but that probably puts you above the pack in terms of a guy who's a UFA after this season.
Yeah, I would forget it because I just assume that if you're going to trade for him, you need him to be on a contract extension. And if that's the case, I think I'm with BK. It would cost you probably a first-round pick.
I think they did that with Bouwmeester. I think he was a UFA when they traded for him.
I think you're right.
And then they signed him after that season.
Yep. I think...
Sorry, T-Bone. I was just like thinking out loud there.
Well, no, but to that point, though, and we were just talking about this off air.
Yeah.
That was, 2013?
Yeah, it was. He was 6.6 with Calgary, was traded to the Blues, and then that next season he signed for $5.4 million.
But this is a totally different era of the NHL. Like, now it is like...
If he's traded, he's going to resign.
Exactly.
Like the framework will be in place. When the deal is done, I would assume he will sign an extension with wherever that new team is. Otherwise, if you're that new team, like I don't know that it's worth it for you to trade for.
Unless you're a push your chips all in. Like if you're I'm just going to spitball team here, but if you're the L.A. Kings.
Or if you're the Coyotes.
He's the piece that puts us over the top. This is the piece that wins us a Stanley Cup. Who cares if he re-signs with us? Then you make that kind of move. Well, the Blues are by far not in that spot in the year one of a retool.
I think the Blues got to put themselves in that spot where they say, like, we need something that puts us over the top on the defensive side.
I agree, but I think you got to do it with the framework in place for the extension. When you trade for him, you will have the extension in place. Otherwise, I don't think that you do it on a one-year rental. I think that you absolutely do it if you have him re-sign, and I think that he probably would. If Calgary just loves Bolduc, cool, yeah, do that deal. But I wonder if it will take a little bit more than that because everybody needs defensemen. Everybody needs guys that play the way that Hanifin does. So
they're loaded up too, though, on defense. But other teams might be coming to the table with at least a first-round pick.
T-Bone, what do you got?
Guys, bet it or forget it. Both Mizzou and Illinois will be top 8 seeds in the NCAA tournament.
Top 8? I'm going to say forget it.
Because
I do think Mizzou is coming on a little bit.
Sorry, they stink.
They're going to win tonight against FAU.
Missouri's win this weekend, and it was pretty convincing, has me thinking that they might be a little better than I was expecting them to be after that atrocious loss against Jackson State. I don't know that they're going to be really good, but they could make the tournament. I think if they do, though, it'll be like a last four in type of a situation. So I'll say forget it, and it's not because I'm extremely low on Mizzou, but I'm lower on Mizzou than what you're saying there. I think Illinois is going to be a good team, though.
I think Illinois is going to be a bottom 10 team, probably.
Going to be a top 8 seed.
They'll probably
exit the first round.
The only way for Illinois to get through the first round is if they're a 16 seed, not a 1 seed.
Oh, come on. I would forget this because I'm still skeptical on Mizzou. I know they've played better of late. I still don't see a guy that I think is a game breaker.
Just forget about Jackson State. It didn't happen, okay?
Shawnee's is better than I gave him credit for. Shawnee's has had a really good season so far this year. Now, the 62% three-point shooting, don't know that that's sustainable over the long haul. But he's been a really good player for them, and Caleb Grill seems to be finding his way in this offense now. He had a weird start to the season. He was clearly not totally confident in the way that he was being utilized, but now he has essentially taken over the Kobe Brown role. Not the scoring, but the I'm going to be a stretch forward, maybe a wing type of piece that can also rebound for them and distribute. He is the guy that kind of makes everything work, and he's starting to fill that role in a better way than what he did early on.
How's my guy Vanover looking?
Better.
Still big?
Yeah, he's fine.
You watch out a bragging rights game, Vanover's going to dunk all over Illinois.
I'm very worried about this game against Kansas. That could get away.
Well, that's going to be a butt whooping.
Did you see they're retiring Thomas Robinson's number at that game?
Mizzou's going to be Philadelphia Eagles, while Kansas is going to be San Francisco. It'll be over quick.
Mizzou's got a big 3-game stretch coming up. It's on the road at Kansas. That's tall task. Tall task. Yeah, loss would be a win if you can keep it at least within like 15 points. Seton Hall, neutral site. That'll be an interesting one. I think that'll be the most telling of the upcoming 3 games. I think you probably got to win that one. And then Illinois in the neutral site bragging rights game. You throw the records out in that game. I think Illinois is the better team. Mizzou has played Illinois well in recent years against Brad Underwood. So I don't feel great about it. But if you can go 1-2 in this stretch with at least one of those other games being super competitive, I feel pretty good about it. But you got to get there. 1-2. At least one of those other 2 losses, really competitive.
Yeah, both sides are in the toughest part of their non-con schedule because you just mentioned Mizzou, Illinois FAU tonight, at Tennessee this weekend, and then the bragging rights game coming up as well.
Absolutely insane. I appreciate, though, that these 2 schools are willing to schedule like that. I think it's better for college basketball that we're seeing some of these games. Hell, I thought it was really cool that we saw UConn versus Kansas last weekend. I hated that it was the exact same time as the Pac-12 championship game, which ended up being awesome, so I didn't see any of that game for KU versus UConn, but those are the kinds of matchups that we should see early in the season, man. It's good for both teams. Nobody's going to hold it against UConn that they lost by 4 points in a true road game against Kansas. Nobody. But everybody's going to look back on that and be like, man, that was a really cool thing for the sport. It used to not happen, and I'm glad that it's happening a little bit more now in college basketball. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're diving into the junk drawer with Alex, a story from a Cardinals player that makes me feel better about my own commissionership here in the 101 ESPN Fantasy League. So we'll get into that coming up in about 15 minutes or so. But next, what was the lesson that the Cardinals learned from Wilson Contreras' struggles last season? T-Bone thinks that it might be the wrong one. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues beat the Vegas Golden Knights yesterday 2-1 in overtime, and they'll be back in action tomorrow night as they host Vegas in a home-and-home series. 8 o'clock will be Puck Drop with Chris Kerber and Joey Vitale, and Alex Ferrario and Joey will have your pregame coverage starting at 7. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
That's Alex, he's T-Bone, and I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. What was the lesson that the Cardinals learned from the strange season, the up-and-down nature of Willson Contreras' first year here in St. Louis? That was a question that was posed to John Mozeliak yesterday on MLB Network. Here's what John Mozeliak had to say in response to that.
Still very high, and we do feel like the second half of the season he did finish really strong, so we're excited about that. He knows he had to make some adjustments, and I think the biggest thing for us was we were probably a bit naive going into the season on that position in the sense of we had Yadier Molina for 19 years, and I think, you take that for granted to some level, and so, the nuances of what we expected from that role is a lot different than maybe someone that just has been catching for another team, another organization, and then we're like, no, this is how we do it. Well, sometimes you got to actually show people what we want and how to do it. And so we're going to be much more proactive on this offseason, making sure he understands expectations and, more importantly, working with pitchers. But I think the second half of last year, he did get a lot better, and I think he understood our expectations.
How? What he just said is the equivalent of, I had a new baby and I didn't teach that new baby not to touch a hot stove because I figured, well, you see your big sister not touching the hot stove, so you should know that doesn't happen in the house.
I would also add this. It shows a complete lack of awareness of what you had.
Yeah.
What it seems like the Cardinals did not realize was just how much Yadier Molina meant to them. You've been telling everybody for 20 years how much Yadier Molina means to your organization. And now you learn?
He leaves and you're like, Willson Contreras should be just as good as Yadi.
I will never understand the way that they operated at that position this year. If you wanted somebody to be a defensive-minded catcher, that's fine. More than fine, in fact. There were options available to do that last offseason. But everybody knew Willson Contreras wasn't that guy. Everybody. And I'm not just talking about locally, nationally. Jeff Passan said, I remember listening to The Cut, hey, I don't think that he's going to end up being on the Cardinals because of the way that he plays. We talked to Jim Bowden about this. I don't think that Willson Contreras makes sense for the Cardinals because he doesn't make sense for the way that they ask their catchers to play. Everybody outside of this organization seemingly knew how this was going to go before the Cardinals. And so the lesson to be learned from the Contreras struggles last year, Alex, to me are less about Willson Contreras or the catcher situation and more about the Cardinals identifying and understanding what the talent is that they currently have on the roster. It's been an issue that we've talked about in different ways for 5 or 7 years now. The Cardinals seem to have a difficult time evaluating their own talent. Now, this is in the minor leagues, this is at the major leagues, this is at every level, right? And they've had moments where it ends up being fine because they figure it out over time. Like, they'll figure it out. But there have been a lot of times where whether it's guys that end up getting traded elsewhere that they clearly didn't see the talent that other teams saw in them, or just like taking too long to figure out what they have internally, or thinking a guy is or can be something that he's just not. Guys, Dakota Hudson was never going to be a strikeout guy. It was never going to happen. Jake Woodford was never going to develop a slider that ended up inducing a ton of swing and miss. And the Cardinals kept trying and kept trying and kept trying and kept trying. And they were like, hey, if we get a new pitching coach in here, he's going to teach him. It's going to be a slider, and it's going to work for him. No. Jake Woodford is who he is. Dakota Hudson is who he is. These guys do not change who they are as players. Tyler O'Neill is not suddenly going to become somebody that stays healthy for 162 games because he's incapable of doing that. I don't think Dylan Carlson is suddenly going to start hitting right-handed pitching. Now, I hope, like nothing else, that he ends up doing exactly that and he becomes a starting outfielder for them and is an all-star perennially. I'm really skeptical of it because we've seen now a pretty good sample size of him doing none of those things. Willson Contreras was never going to be a good defensive catcher. He was always going to be a below-average guy back there, and as a game caller, there was always going to be something that was left to be desired. So one thing that I will give them credit for is they learned from that. And now they're adjusting what their pitchers are. Guys, I think there's a reason why they brought in a lot of veteran pitchers. I don't think it's because they like old pitchers or because they're cheaper. I think it's because they know, hey, these guys know exactly who they are, and they're not going to need to be led by Wilson Contreras. They're going to go out there and have a pretty good idea of what they need to throw, when they need to throw it, and how they need to throw it. That puts less pressure on Wilson Contreras. So Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, Miles Michaelis, Sonny Gray, all these guys, they're not going to be, their success or failures will not be determined by who's behind the plate. And I think last year, there were too many times where they felt that was indeed the case. So I think there's a lesson to be learned here, but I think it's less about Wilson Contreras and more about identifying what they have, understanding that, and then building their team accordingly.
And if anything, that comment gives me more concern, and maybe I'm in the minority here, hearing Mo say that. Like, if you were that naive to realize that a Hall of Fame caliber catcher wasn't going to be emulated by the next guy you brought in, how am I supposed to trust that you're not naive enough to realize what was wrong with your pitching staff or what was wrong with your roster last season? That's very concerning for a team that's trying to get into a winning window. If the guy in charge of it all was so naive to see something that every single person involved with baseball saw was going to happen.
It's a fair concern. I would say, just as a retort, if I was to play devil's advocate here, I think the reason why they felt that they could do this is because it's always worked for the Cardinals. The Cardinals can always look back at their history and say to themselves, everything we do tends to work out, because they always had success. Now, they would miss the playoffs here and there occasionally, but more often than not, they would get into the playoffs, and every year since 2007, they had been above 500. The thing that changed after this past season is they can no longer say that. They are no longer the model organization in Major League Baseball. They just had the season that they laugh at other teams for having. They won 71 games and were abysmal from start to finish. The culture was in question. Their manager came out and said, we got to get rid of some of these dudes that do not put winning first. They had to non-tender a bunch of dudes because they said, we need to churn this roster because of how much of a failure that season was. They were embarrassed by what they did. So when you have a season like that, my hope at least, Alex, is that it does change a bit how you view your roster and how you view the changes that need to be made. Whereas last year, you're coming off of winning seasons and you just believe, hey, we'll put this guy in, our culture will fix him, and we'll be good to go. It was the Cubs that were the problem, not Wilson Contreras. And I don't think they can say that any longer. I think that they now have to come to the realization we were part of the problem, and we as an organization need to change. We need to bend to what is now necessary to get back to our winning ways. I don't know that will for sure happen, but I think that's probably what they're trying to accomplish this offseason. It needs to be what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if it happens or not, because it's certain. I think they're going to be disappointed because it still sounds like they're planning or preparing for Contreras to improve defensively, and I don't think that's going to happen. And to your point, they are planning on Carlson learning to hit right-handed pitching. I'm not sure that's going to happen. So we will see. I think they're doing less of that this year than they were last year in terms of, like, Dusty Blake's going to give everybody a swing and miss pitch all of a sudden, which is just ridiculous to think was possible. But I don't know. I'm still skeptical that they've completely fixed it, because a lot of what he just said in that comment was, well, Contreras now understands what we're expecting.
What do you think the plan is at catcher this year?
I think the plan is that it's going to be a 50-50 split between Contreras and Herrera. Now, what the plan is 2 years from now, I don't know, because the reason I think it's 50-50 this year is I've tinfoiled this before on the show. I think their hope is that Herrera will take the job from Contreras, because otherwise, why not just keep Herrera down in the minor leagues? Like, I kind of understood the reasoning of, well, you got to keep his confidence up. Well, it's a business. He should understand the business side of baseball. But instead, you DFA'd a true, just quality backup catcher on Kisner to bring in Herrera, who's going to need playing time to continue to develop at the major leagues, and you think he's better defensively, and you raved about his defensive game calling and all that. I think their hope is that Herrera will take the job from Contreras, and Contreras becomes, whether it be an outfielder or just an everyday DH, by the next year.
I will be very curious to see how that goes early in the season. I know they had that plan with Wilson Contreras and Andrew Kisner to try to get everything kind of working. They got so far off track early last season that everything kind of got derailed. I'll be curious to see what it looks like. Do they end up going with something where it's determined by, hey, is it a righty or lefty on the mound, and does that determine whether or not Nolan Gorman's in the lineup? They kind of went away from that by the end of last season where Gorman was hitting both righties and lefties, so I don't know that that will be the case. Does it end up being determined by Brendan Donovan's availability? I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it because when Wilson Contreras is not behind the plate, you'll want him at DH. But if he's at DH, it takes up a spot for one of Donovan or Gorman potentially. And if you put one of those, or if you put Donovan in the outfield, now you're getting worse defensively out there. There's a trickle-down effect of the way that they end up handling this Wilson Contreras situation.
And I wonder if, forget the right-left splits, because you're right, Gorman was going against both of them. I wonder if they just make it where, you know what, he can hit both, but he's got a bad back. He's going to have to sit out against lefties. We can use that as kind of a placeholder as an off day for him.
That's an interesting way to look at it as well. Maybe they just keep him healthy a little bit better, or maybe they trade him. Coming up in 15 minutes, why are the Blues such a front runner this year? I don't understand it. And this is not me calling them names. They're undefeated when they score first, and they have not won a game since the first week of the season when the other team scores first. Why is this such an issue for them? We'll get into it coming up in about 15 minutes or so, but the junk drawer is coming up next. Alex, you got to hear what Ryan Helsley had to say about the Cardinals Fantasy Football League. That's here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So, Alex, earlier this year, Adam Wainwright called me out for being a bad fantasy football commissioner.
Oh, well, rightfully so. You were terrible.
I didn't appreciate it. I thought it was uncalled for. The morning show had all of these questions or concerns about the way that the draft order was selected. They had frustrations about it being a superflex league, even though I asked everybody first, do you want to be a superflex league? All of these different things came up.
You added 2 more people the last minute with the superflex league.
Oh, and then Randy got mad about how the waivers work, even though the waivers have never changed in the way that they operate.
That was just Randy not understanding the rules.
So all these different things have happened under my watch as the fantasy football commissioner. By the way, I am horrendous in our league. I just absolutely awful. My team is terrible. It's got all the good names, and yet all of them stink every week. Every single week I'm projected to win, and every week I underperform by like 30 points. It's amazing. So yesterday, I'm listening to Foul Territory, and Ryan Helsley is their guest. And they ask him about the Cardinals Fantasy Football League. And Alex, I gotta say, I think it's time to call into question Adam Wainwright as a commissioner of his Fantasy Football League as well. Let's give it a listen.
I was hurt at the time and couldn't travel with the team. And I was like, let's just randomize it. Like, that's the fairest way. But they were wanting to play a poker game with like 3 or 4 dudes that have never played poker in their lives. And all those guys ended up with like the worst picks. I was like, that's not fair. And they ended up doing it, and I stood my ground, and I didn't get in the league. So I'm kind of kicking myself now. But I'm in another league with my agency and stuff, so that's fun.
Wait. So what all went down with this? What was it? I don't feel like we're getting all the shady business that was going down here.
Well, me and Wayno had a different. Me and Wayno is the head of the league, all right? And maybe I should have just submitted to him and let him, lead the ship and let him do it how he wanted to, because now obviously I'm not in the league. And he got his way, obviously. But I just didn't like how we were picking it. I was like, if I'm investing this amount of money, I want a little bit of a say with how the pick goes. And it didn't work out that way. And they just, everybody, it was like 11 people versus me. They were putting stuff in my locker, just chirping me all day long, just like, you're making this harder than it needs to be. And I stood my ground, and they left me out. So now I'm kicking myself.
I'm confused. So they played a poker game to decide the positioning of the draft.
Yes. So as you get eliminated from the poker game,
ridiculous.
That person that is eliminated will have the last pick in the draft, and then so on and so forth, right? I actually kind of like it as a way to pick the order, to be honest with you.
You're putting poker skills into your draft order, and if I'm investing that much money, I don't want my poker skills to be in this.
Alex, we've all played poker nights, right? The worst guy at the table could absolutely win on one night.
Not if he's an idiot and doesn't know how to bet.
He could, though. Like, he makes so many stupid bets, you have no idea how to read him. And so, he could end up robbing you blind in one night. Now, over time, if you guys played 10 different poker nights together, that guy's going to lose all of his money over time.
But what if I've never played poker before and I don't understand the game? But I love fantasy football, but I've never played poker.
Yeah, you can read up on the rules, and you can pretty quickly understand how to
trash. Just draw a damn name out of a hat. What are we making this more difficult than it needs to be?
That didn't do our commissioner well, because I think our commissioner had the #1 pick.
Well, there were 14 damn teams, and it was a super flex league. What'd you think was going to go wrong?
I mean, first of all, you're right, T-Bone. The picks don't really matter all that much. I mean, this year, if you had the #1 overall pick, how you feeling right now? If you had the #3 overall pick, how you feeling right now? If you got Cooper Kupp in the first round, how you feeling right now with that pick? If you got Jonathan Taylor in the second round, how you feeling about that one? Justin Jefferson, how you feeling about that? All of these picks stink, man. They were all terrible. You're winning your league this year based on, did you have Brock Purdy or not? Did you end up having Raheem Mostert or not? If you have these guys, you're probably doing pretty well. If you didn't draft any Jets, you're doing pretty well. Unfortunately for me, I did. Do you think that Adam Wainwright deserves criticism, T-Bone, for this way of going about things as the commissioner?
Yeah, I'll give him a little criticism. The whole league's got to be on the same page. That's why I blasted BK, because basically BK pulled the I'm going to veto everything.
No, and then also BK was like, oh, yeah, we're adding 2 people in. When me and you said no, don't.
Yeah,
First of all, nobody else did.
I will.
Nobody else responded.
I will. That is also true. I will blame Wayno a little bit on this one. Yeah.
Also, he's a worse commissioner than I am.
No, I wouldn't do that.
No, now you're getting ahead of the cart right here.
Yeah.
You also don't kick somebody out because they weren't available to play in the poker game, and you were like, no, I don't think we should do this.
Yeah, I think
It
if you're going
sounds
to
like
do
that was a Helsley decision, to be fair.
Yeah, I think
Sounds like Helsley was a little
if
annoying.
you're going to do the poker game, everybody's got to be there to do it. That would be my biggest criticism of it all. But
it sounds like Helsley was the guy that was like, I'm not doing it. And they were like, okay, fine. If you're not going to do it, then you can't play. And he's like, fine. Take my ball and go home.
I'm not playing on your fantasy league.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Dan Ranger.
I should have done that with ours.
What do you think is the best way to go about determining a draft order? Like, if you could, we used to do in my home league, we would use the home run derby as a way to determine it. So, like, the guy
did you pick last every year?
Come on, man.
You'd be right there with
not
them.
we
Second to last, I hit
participate
the
in a
wall.
home run derby. You get to pick a player that is in Major League Baseball's home run derby, and the way that they finish is the way that you end up getting to pick where you select in
And
the
will you
draft.
draw names of who gets the first pick in terms of the
It's
players?
based on last year's draft or last year's standings. So, like, the team that won the league gets to pick first which player they would like to back in the home run derby. I thought that was a fun way to go.
We said what we want to do with my family league is we wanted all of us golf. So we wanted to go play golf, and then
that sets the rankings.
That sets the rankings.
I like that one. Yeah,
that is still based on skill, though.
But we all play it.
Okay.
So it's not like one person's in our
Do you
group
use
that
a
does.
handicap? That'd probably be the best way to go.
Probably. I don't really remember, to be honest with you.
Sure.
As you know.
See, I
picked fourth, though.
I just like the random. I like it random, randomized.
We do randomized
Don't really know
stuff
what's
too.
going on,
Yeah.
but
Who cares?
that's the way that I've always done it. I've never done anything
As
specific.
long as you have the proper amount of people in the designated league, BK.
Why are you
you're
complaining,
fine.
by the way? You're in the playoffs.
Yeah, with Joe freaking Flacco as my other quarterback.
All of the teams in our league are absolutely terrible.
Just if it would have been yours is terrible.
I don't want my team to be thrown under the bus.
You
like
barely beat me with Joe Flacco, man.
Some of us are 12-1. Okay.
A little bit of news passed along, not anything significant. Doesn't need to be like breaking news or anything.
Is it T-Bone breaking news?
NHL draft will be held on June 28th and the 29th at the Sphere in Las Vegas.
Ryder, listen up, because it's at the Sphere in Las Vegas, so T-Bone and I will...
This will be the final draft before it is decentralized. I will be joining you for this draft in Las Vegas this
the
year.
station can only afford 2 guys. T-Bone did such a great job producing last time, so...
we need the two...
You can host from here, buddy.
It is officially time to tank for the Blues.
I need a top 5 pick at the Sphere.
For there to be a whole lot of interest in who the Blues are going to be selecting on June 28th.
I need a top 5 pick for this year because that Sphere is going to be incredible.
Hey, Ryder, this will be in the budget, right?
Yeah.
We're good with that?
Ryder,
We're setting the budget right now. This is typically when the meetings are taking place.
We'll drive to
Oh,
Vegas.
wait, hold on.
We're driving.
Yeah, we'll drive to Vegas.
Nah, man, I got Southwest points. Y'all can drive.
Oh, yeah, I got Southwest Point too. So we'll fly ourselves. We just need the station to take care of the hotel.
Jamie has a connection at Circa. We'll go ahead and use his connection at Circa.
Yeah,
It'll be a
bed.
free bed.
No, 1 bed. I'll get the bed. BK can have the couch, and T-Bone can sleep in the bathtub.
That's fine. Yeah, I think we're all in. You good?
Sure.
Hell yeah, let's go. We're so going. I'm so glad you brought that up because I saw it and I was going to tell you guys, like, yeah, we're going to the Sphere this year.
100%. Oh, man. T-Bone's going to Spearmint Rhino, and it's going to be a great story to be told the next
T-Bone
morning.
won't have money afterwards.
Coming up next.
Chance I'm left behind.
The Blues are a front-running team. How do they fix this problem? We'll talk about it here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about My Dentist 100 West Dental that has taken away the anxiety of going to the dentist. And you're probably like me listening where you're like, yeah, I haven't been to the dentist in a while. Or I hate going to the dentist, sitting in the chair, finding out what they're going to say. You got to go through all the cleaning process. You don't have to worry about that with that 100 West Dental because the customer experience is at the top of mind. And the part I love the most is they're not just worried about your teeth health. They're worried about your overall health. They're making sure your teeth are healthy, your gums are healthy, that your overall health is in place. And that hits home for me because I had a dentist that didn't focus on that, missed a tumor, and then I lost 7 teeth. So make sure you get out there before the end of the year so the insurance money doesn't go back to the insurance company. But more importantly, get in and say my name, Alex Ferrario, and you'll get $1,000 off in an Invisalign package. Or if you're looking to whiten the teeth, it's that white Christmas deal. You mentioned 101 ESPN, and they will give you a free teeth whitening kit. Get with the best at 100 West Dental, 100westdental.com.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up here in just a little bit, it's our favorite segment that we do regularly here around BK and Ferrario, our Major League Baseball offseason Roundup. Yeah!
Come on, man. I was on the air till 12 last night.
You guys did a great job with that yesterday. I was dying.
Well, T-Bone did that all for me.
We'll get that here in about 10 minutes or
also,
so.
I've never seen Bradford get so excited than when there's a Major League Baseball
Roundup.
Roundup.
He was jumping in with you guys today. He was excited about it.
That dude puts the hat on. Like, he gets excited for 2 things: Sports Center updates and roundups. And alliteration. So 3 things. Love you, Bradford.
And Mizzou sound.
Yeah.
A raging roundup around the corner. I love that man.
Let's talk a little bit about the Blues. Alex, they're a front runner, and I can't explain why
front
this
runner
is.
for the Cup.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
They have yet to lose this year when they score first. 12-0-0 on the season when they are the first team to score in a game. When they don't score first, 1-10-1. Alex, the best part about this, though, is not just that they're 1-10-1 when the other team scores first. It's when those 2 games took place in which they received a point. So they lose in a shootout against Dallas. Dallas scores first. Guess when that game took place? It was the first game of the season. They win in a shootout against Seattle. Seattle had scored first. That was the second game of the season. So in the first 2 games this year, you win in a shootout and you lose in a shootout. So you end up with 3 points from those 2 games after the other team scores first. Since then, you are 0-10 in games in which your opponent scores first. I don't know why this is happening. Like, I can give you theories on why that's the case. You've got pretty good goaltending, and you're not a team. You're kind of like the Tennessee Titans of, hey, when you play from ahead, you can get this forecheck going. You can play your defensive structure. You don't have to worry about trying to get your offense going and getting chances going the other way. Like, I get all of that, I suppose, but to be this easy where I can watch the first 10 minutes of a game and whoever scores first, I know who's going to win that game. I can like live bet it on FanDuel and be fine. I'm going to win every single time. That's crazy, dude. I don't think that I've seen a stat this black and white for the Blues in a long time. It's crazy.
I mean, you said why. It's goaltending in those games. So you were outshot 34-24 against the Dallas Stars. They outshot you 10-6 in the first period and 10-3 in the third period. So your goaltending stood on its head and kept you alive in that hockey game. You were outshot 9-4 in the first and then 11-9 in the second against Seattle. Gave up 31 shots on goal. Your goaltending kept you in that game. The bigger problem is when they've given up the goal, it falls apart so fast because the Blues get into this. They get into this area that's like, oh, we gotta push for offense now, and they're making the dumb mistakes in their own zone that's leading to odd man rushes and breakaways and turnovers that lead to the other team scoring. Last year, it was the mental fragility from one game to the other to where when they lost a game ugly, you knew it was going to trickle over into the next 5 or 6 games. This season, it's when one goal goes in early, they fall apart. I talked about this on pregame with Joe. That game against, what was it? It was the Arizona Coyotes. It was the 5th time this season that the Blues have given up a goal 60 seconds or less to open up a period. So they're giving up goals quick 5 times. But there have been 9 different occasions this season that the Blues have allowed their opponents to score multiple goals, 2 or 3, in a span less than 3 minutes. So when they give up one, and the trend has been with the exception of Dallas and Seattle, you can expect 2 or 3 more. They've had times where they've stifled that, but typically they do that when they get the lead and they go up by 1, 2, or 3 goals. It's so rare for the Blues to score one and then allow the opponent to tie things up. It happened in Arizona, and it happened in Vegas. Otherwise, when they score first, they're backing that up with 2 or 3 more goals. It's Jekyll and Hyde. Getting really emotional right now. It's Jekyll and Hyde of a team that when they score first, they're confident that they say, okay, our game's working, let's keep doing it. When they don't score first, well, this isn't working, so now let's try something else.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It really is one of the more baffling things I've seen. Now, hey, it's better than the alternative. Like, they could be a team that, hey, they get you excited early on and then they just give up the lead every time. They're not doing that, so that's I suppose, a positive. But if that starts to happen, where kind of the way that it has with the defensive structure, right? Early on in the season, really good defensively. Lately, not so much, and you're having to rely heavily upon your goaltending. If it starts to go that way, where, hey, this is something that you can lean on early in the portion, or in the early portion of the season, the first quarter of the season now, but then in the second quadrant of the season, it starts to revert and it regresses in a way. It's not an ideal situation to have. They've got to find a way to stop the bleeding. When they give up a goal early, to your point, Alex, on them giving up another one right thereafter, you've got to find something that you can put your hat on. Like, they use that Sonny line a lot after a goal is scored.
That's what I was going to say.
Maybe that's the way you do it. I don't know.
They don't have that line anymore. The line was Sonny, Neighbors, and Toropchenko or Sammy Blais, and now they don't have it because Neighbors is playing in your top 6, which he should be.
It's why I think maybe sooner rather than later, it's time to cut ties with Jakub Vrana.
Yeah.
So you can reunite that line, not all of them, because Neighbors is obviously working his way up the lineup as he should. But you can at least have Sonny and Toropchenko out there together, and Sammy Blais plays a similar role to what they had Neighbors doing at that time. Probably put those guys back out there, and your third line will include one of the AHL players that you're bringing up, or Phil Kessel.
You just don't have a confidence line right now. Like, the line for you was the response line, and like last night, Vegas has that line, that Keegan Colasar and William Carrier line. That's their go-to line when the other team scores, where if one team starts to get momentum, Cassidy will put that line out there because, 1, they'll win a faceoff, and 2, they'll put the puck north. They had that when Reeves was there as well. Every team has one. That's something that the Blues probably lack.
From the 3-1-4, guys, the Blues blew a 3-0 lead against the Sabres. Sure did, and then they won 6-4.
Yeah.
They won the game. That's all that matters.
Like, different team, man.
There's times when they're giving up the lead, don't get me wrong, and they're allowing the other team to come back, but they are not losing these games. When they get up 1-0, You can go over to your FanDuel Sportsbook app. So far this year, I'm not telling you to do this now because it's probably going to regress at some point.
Well, you should do it because it would go the other way.
Yeah. So far this year, if you had gone to your FanDuel Sportsbook app the moment that the Blues score the first goal of the game and bet on the Blues to win, you'd be 12-0 in those situations. If you had done the exact opposite, the other team scores first and you bet the puck line on that team, you would be 10-1 so far this year with the other team winning. Or 11-1, excuse me.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That should not be possible. You'd be 23-1 with your sports betting on a live sports betting when you just bet the team that scores the first goal in the Blues game so far this year. It's one of the more baffling things I've seen, and it's great that they're scoring first and then continuing to maintain that lead. And it's a little troubling that they're not able to come back in any of these.
You could just figure out how to get back into the hockey game after one goal gives up. We're talking about a team that's probably got 6-7 more victories.
I think you're right on when they don't have a response line for when they go down 1-0. They also just don't have a power play to get them back in games.
That's
That's the biggest thing for me. I think there have been multiple games this year that you can point to, and look, they've won, as you said. When they score first, they've won. But there's been multiple games you can point to and say, they had power plays to put that game out of reach. Instead, he had to sweat it out down the stretch. And then also they have games where they're down 1-0 or 2-0. And you go, all right, you got a big 5-on-4 here. You got a chance to cut the lead down to 1, or you got a chance to tie it, and the power play just isn't there. Like that, I think that's the biggest reason why you're seeing this team kind of remain right around 500 and not be able to come back in games.
I got to update this stat because I kind of got away from it, but through 17 games, they had 11 different occasions where they had an opportunity to tie the game up with the power play, and they did not convert on it.
And that's been the case.
That was 16 games in. So to T-Bone's point, add 7 more games, you're talking about probably 17 or 18 opportunities to tie the game up, and you've missed it.
One other quick NHL nugget to get to here, Alex. The NHL announced yesterday that they're expecting the cap to go up by a little more than $4 million for the upcoming year. The cap will be $87.7 million. It's what their current projections are, at least. That would give the Blues, as of today, about $17 million to work with. Now, it is important to note that is with them only having about 15 players on their roster. So if you add in a bunch of minimum level contracts for now, they have about $9 million to spare for additions going into this offseason. Does that mean anything in a significant way to you? What does that change, if anything?
I think it means something to me now, but it will mean more next season, because now what this does is it allows other teams to jump into the race if they're willing to eat more contracts. Teams that want draft picks, it's an opportunity if you decide to try and move off from some contracts. But what this also means is when the Blues get the clear picture, and that's the cautionary word here, the Blues have to get a clearer picture of who they are. But when they do, we're talking whether it's this offseason or next offseason where the cap could be $4 million or $8 million. The Blues will have the ability to go out there and bring in the one piece that gets them to that next level. It's why I'm so gung-ho on Noah Hannafin, because you adding that $4.2 million, Cap Friendly says it gives the Blues about $17 million before they got to do their re-signing and things like that. We're talking about $7.5, $8 million for this defenseman, and still gives you $9 million to do work with some young contracts. So this does a lot for the Blues. They'll have the capital. They'll have some players in place if they decide to trade away. But to open up that cap space gives Doug Armstrong the opportunity with a little bit more wiggle room.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, it's time for our Major League Baseball offseason
Roundup.
Here on 101 ESPN. this segment.
Okay, seriously, I lost oxygen
It's
on
time
that
for a
one.
Major League Baseball offseason roundup.
No yeehaw. I just did the yeehaw. You
Here
can't
on
do two
101
yeehaws.
ESPN, you got BK and Ferrario. Alex is going to pass out.
Oh, man, we
here in
can't
the
have the
next
air. I'm
couple of
supposed to be
minutes.
authentic.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
All right, boys, let's start out with this. I think we can officially eliminate the Blue Jays from the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes.
Oh, yeah? What happened?
It was reported last night that the Blue Jays were believed to have been meeting at their team complex in Florida with Shohei Ohtani and his representatives. As you guys know, it had been stated that the Ohtani side of things does not want anything to be leaked out, and if it is, it will be used against that team. Can we eliminate Toronto now, Alex?
You absolutely can, and I want to know the idiot in Toronto that leaked this information.
Hold on. Well, first off, of course somebody did leak it, but the GM not showing up to the winter meetings was a pretty big hint, by the way.
I don't know, man.
Well, maybe they were trying
He
to...
did a Zoom with the media and said, sorry, I had a conflict
I
that
meant
came
Boca
up.
Raton. Did somebody, did Shohei walk into this meeting, and while he's walking in, his agent calls and says, hey, man, somebody leaked this, and he turns around and says, sorry, I'm out.
Pretty much.
Wow.
I would be furious if I'm the Blue Jays, in all seriousness. If this got leaked by somebody inside of their camp, that is not a good look, given what he wants this to be.
I hope Shohei comes out wherever he signs and says, yeah, Toronto was up there, but they leaked the information.
See, I still think he's going to be a Blue Jay. I think he's signing with Toronto.
Well,
I think he's going back to the Angels.
The Cubs are in this
really?
then.
I genuinely believe he's just going to end up back in the Angels.
Oh, I think he's going to Toronto.
LA.
Well, I think he's going to the Cubs because it was leaked that the Cubs are not involved.
So there's another report, to your point, Alex. ESPN Jeff Passan says that the Cubs are, quote, waning optimism that they will be able to land Shohei Ohtani.
That's where he's going.
In other words, they went, Shohei, we didn't leak it. We did it. We met with you. Look, pick us. Toronto leaked the information.
What do you guys think are the legitimate options right now? It sure seems like it's the Dodgers, Blue Jays, and Angels, right?
By the way, the Dodgers keep getting connected to him, and there's like no report. I mean, there's been no reporting on Shohei at all. Selfish dude.
Now you know where he's going.
I hate the way he's handling this, by the way. I think it's terrible for the sport.
I agree. And I'm glad Andy McCullough is calling him out for it. Mostly because he complained for a full 45-minute podcast about it.
Sounds like me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think it's down. I think it's down to the Angels, Blue Jays, and I guess Dodgers. But there's been nothing that would like suggest that they're the ones actually interested in Ohtani. Like,
you don't think the Giants are still in it?
No, the Giants are connected. They're like the Cardinals of yesteryear, where it's like they were there.
But they got the money.
I'm worried about the
so did
Giants.
The Cardinals.
No, they don't.
I'm worried about the Giants. Their fans are going to
riot.
self-combust, dude. If they don't get Shohei or Yamamoto, what else is out there for them? You're going to get Cody Bellinger, and that's going to be your prized offseason addition? Because I don't think the Padres are sending Juan Soto up there. Like, I guess Randy Arozarena, maybe? You try to trade for him? I don't know how much they have in the coffers to be able to make a move like that, though. I don't know, man. It's getting late early out there in San Francisco if they're not able to get one of these big-time additions.
Sundown's coming, man. I'll see you on the dueling grounds.
Let's continue with our Major League Baseball offseason
roundup. No, just one shot. It was a
It
duel.
seems as though the Mariners are setting themselves up to take a shot at a cost-controlled outfielder, boys. Do you think that player will come from the Cardinals? There was a report yesterday that the Mariners are now moving out a bunch of payroll. They traded Jared Kelenic along with a couple of other players from their roster to open up some money to make potentially a big move. But they already needed an outfielder. Now they trade Jared Kelenic. Do you think that the Cardinals match up well with the Mariners?
No, I don't, because I don't know who that cost-controlled outfielder is that they would want. And it would be Lars Nootbaar or Jordan Walker, and the Cardinals aren't moving on from those guys.
Agreed.
I don't think they care about Dylan Carlson, and I don't think they care about Tyler O'Neill. Sorry, probably mean thing to say. I think they're in the Juan Soto sweepstakes, and I would also wonder if Luis Robert goes to Seattle.
Oh,
that might be big C fishing, but I mean, if Chicago's shipping out everything and they move out Dylan Cease and you get a bat in return, you get a pitcher in return for Luis Robert, and you really start the cycle over again.
That's why I mentioned Randy A to the Giants. I actually
That's another
think
good
Randy Arozarena will be going to the Mariners. The Mariners have the pitching to be able to make that
Is
work.
that the same division?
No.
Oh, no, yeah. For some reason, I thought he was on Toronto.
No.
Even that doesn't make sense because that's still out
talking
east
about the
compared to
Mariners,
west.
AL West.
Yeah, Toronto's in the east.
Alex,
No,
what
it's
are we doing
not.
with Canada?
Come on, man.
Where's
you
the
serious?
province?
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah,
I can't
Toronto's
tell if
above
you're
New
being
York. No,
serious
yeah,
right
I
now.
am,
It's
because
like playing
Toronto's
Buffalo,
above New
man.
York. Yeah. I'm not good with Canada. I'm not good with Canada.
You've been at the saloon too long.
Yeah,
partner.
I've been drinking that moonshine.
I think they will make a big move for an outfielder. I do not think it's coming from the Cardinals. I don't think the Cardinals are a trade partner. Swing your partner around and round. It's just not going to be the Cardinals.
Jesus, man. If you're going to make the cowboy reference, make it in the cowboy voice.
Oh, no, that was good without the cowboy voice.
No, you need the cowboy voice.
It would have been cheesy otherwise.
What the hell? This whole segment's cheese.
I don't think they're partners for the Cardinals. They seem to be looking for a right-handed bat. So connect the dots.
Ooh, we got two
You're
of
not
them.
trading Walker for Gilbert. It just doesn't make sense. So if they were looking for a left-handed bat, I would still be connecting the dots to maybe you could pull a Donovan or a Newbar and make something happen. But they seem to be just gung-ho on a righty, so I don't think it's going to happen.
Let's continue with our Major League Baseball offseason roundup. Speaking of a team that's going to make a bunch of big moves, Atlanta has been connected to the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. Unfortunately for them, it sure doesn't sound like they're a part of it. Their MLB.com reporter, Mark Bowman, reported yesterday that Atlanta is not actually involved in the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. They're basically being used. I think they might have been used in this Sonny Gray sweepstakes as well, by the way. They are potentially in on Corbin Burns and Tyler Glasnow, though, and it sounds like they would like to make another big move potentially for their lineup. Guys, what do you think Atlanta is setting up right now? Because it sounds like they're in on stuff, but I can't really get a good grasp on what specifically it is that they're in on.
I mean, the two areas that they probably need to upgrade is an outfielder in their bullpen? Although they just got Kellenic from Seattle. So bullpen is their only area. And then if you want, you go out there and get
rotation. They could really use another starter.
And that's the part that I think they go after. I think it's as much as the Tyler Glasnow stuff is heated up with the Chicago Cubs, they make a lot of sense. Maybe Dylan Cease to Atlanta. I think they're setting themselves up to make some type of trade for a massive starting pitcher.
I feel like they're a team that makes a lot of sense for Shane Bieber.
No, he's going to the Cardinals, man.
They need certainty in that rotation, man. And I know Shane Bieber, you can make your jokes about him being certain for not being good next year, but they've got Strider, they've got Fried, who's coming off of the injury, Morton, who's 40 years old, and then after that, Bryce Elder, Marco Gonzalez, I don't know, man. They've got a lot of question marks in their rotation. Somebody like Shane Bieber makes a lot of sense for them. Now, Cease obviously makes a ton of sense. I just don't know that they actually have what it takes to get Dylan Cease. They'd have to give up a ton to be able to go out there and get him.
I wonder if they're going to go and explore still the free agent market in the pitching. I wonder, Snell probably not. Rodriguez would make sense. Honestly, Montgomery would fit with what they're looking for somebody that would be in there for a decent contract, 5 years probably. Maybe they even go just the kind of hey, if Giolito's market falls to a 2-year deal, maybe we bring him in here, see if we can fix him. Because I think they're going to add to the rotation, but I can't pinpoint the trade partner, and I don't think it's going to be Glasnow.
Eduardo Rodriguez is apparently living in Nashville, so there's some connection there in terms of the geographic.
Is there anybody else from Louisiana?
What's Nola, but that ship has sailed.
By the way, apparently they were way off in their contract offer.
Really?
Yeah, did you see?
They probably
under
just
this
said,
same report, Buster only commented underneath and was like, "Yeah," and the reports of them being close on the offer for Aaron Nola was far stated.
Why are we never critical, by the way, of the Braves?
What?
They seem to finish
Winning?
second or third in these sweepstakes a whole lot.
Winning.
Yeah, the 1 year that they won, they won the way that the Cardinals did in 11 and 06. They weren't even the best team.
Why would I be critical of a team that's got all these all-stars on their roster?
Because eventually, wouldn't you want to put yourself over the top? Be a little more aggressive, Atlanta. Go out there and actually win a sweepstakes for somebody.
I think you're trying to
realize the Cardinals are still well behind from being in the same ilk, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not doing this to push up the Cardinals. I'm pushing down the Braves.
I think you're chasing tumbleweeds.
They're not actually as aggressive as people make it out to be.
I think you're chasing tumbleweeds, man.
Yeah.
Chasing waterfalls over here.
There's no waterfalls.
Let's continue with our Major League Baseball offseason roundup. Final one here. Jim Bowden reporting that the Yoshinobu Yamamoto sweepstakes are getting way out of hand.
Getting hot.
His market quote started at $200 million. It continued on to $220 million, then went up to $250 million. Now there are reports that he will get close to $300 million. Alex, this is a really good thing the Cardinals are done with their shopping for their free agent starting pitchers. They were never going to match that kind of a market for Yamamoto.
Oh, I'm sorry. You were sitting here pushing down the Braves. Maybe the Cardinals should try and do something something to put them over the top and spend $300 million on an ace.
Where do you think he ends up? Do you guys have any
Boston.
feel for this?
I think he's going to Boston.
I don't have a great feel. I think it's going to be the Yankees still. Did you see Aaron Boone's comments today?
No.
Where he said, I think he confirmed that he's going to meet with Yamamoto because he's meeting with clubs next week. And he said something along the lines of, he'd look great in pinstripes.
I bet you he goes to Boston. I think he wants that, it was Japanese or Korean influence
Japanese.
with the, I think you've already got that in their stud pitcher.
I hope they go out, the Mariners go out and just sign Yamamoto. They're like, fooled all of you guys. We got another pitcher.
Suckers!
And we're going to keep all of them.
They're like the guy in your fantasy draft that takes all of the quarterbacks. They're
Or
like,
all the running backs like Kerry Davis.
The 18 running backs.
And then by the end of the season, everybody's like, seriously, man? Like,
and then I tried to trade with
somebody.
Kerry, and he just turns down the trade every time.
Of course he did.
Jerk move, Kerry.
Those are your off-season roundup.
What the hell was that? Do it again. Do it again. Do it again.
That's your Major League Baseball off-season
roundup drop.
I'm tired of the complaining. The college football playoff got it right, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll tell you why coming up next.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friend and insurance agent, Tracy Bibb. Had a conversation with her, I think it was 2 weeks ago, because I got an old tree in my backyard, and I'm a little worried this thing is going to fall down and hit my shed, and making sure that it's taken care of if something does happen in that sense. And luckily, Tracy was available the first time I called. She explained everything to me, and now I feel much more safer with this tree in my backyard. This is why you need Tracy. She's always available, always there to give you the information that you need to hear, and she's there if something goes wrong. And look, something will happen, whether it's your home or your car. You got to have the right insurance agent, and that is Tracy Bibb. She's always keeping you updated with the competitive rates, making sure you know what falls underneath that umbrella. So give Tracy a call today and have her explain everything to you. A free, non-committal quote. Just tell her I sent you. She'll walk you through everything. 314-328-4260, and she'll take it from there. She'll even cancel your previous insurance agent, which is very nice to not have to do that confrontation. 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
Terry Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues beat the Vegas Golden Knights last night 2-1 in overtime, and they'll be back in action tomorrow night when they host the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 7 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey joins Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 8. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
I'm sick of hearing all the complaining. We're all going to be happy about this here in about a month whenever the teams take the field in the college football playoff. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. College football playoff committee got it right, guys.
T-Bone wanted a Liberty-Mizzou matchup.
They got it right. When they put out the top four that included Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama, I didn't care which order they were in. I mean, Michigan and Washington had to be the top two, and Texas, Alabama had to be the next two in some order or another. I didn't care how they put them, how they ranked them. Those were the four best teams in the country. And the reason why is because the team that started out the season 12-0 is not the team that finished the season 13-0 at Florida State. I'm sorry. It sucks. I legitimately feel awful for all of those kids that don't get to go to the college football playoff for Florida State because they had a great season. They had a special season, one that will be remembered forever in Tallahassee. That being said, when your quarterback goes down and you then play a game against Louisville and you have an opportunity to show the committee, hey, even with our backup, we are still one of the most dominant teams in college football, they did not do that. They went out there and their offense stunk for 4 quarters, and they won the game 16-6 against a fine, solid, above average Louisville team. You had a chance. We saw a very similar situation a few years ago when it was Cardale Jones that came in the Big Ten championship game for Ohio State. They put up, I believe it was 59 points in that game and answered every question that anybody could possibly have about Ohio State going into the college football playoff. They earned their way in because of their performance in the Big Ten championship game. Florida State did not do that. Any question that you may have had about that team going into the game was answered in a negative way by watching the way that that game played out. Their defense was great. Their offense stunk it up, and because of that, they did not deserve to get into the college football playoff. Georgia did not deserve to get into the college football playoff. You had your opportunity. It was basically a playoff game against Alabama, and you lost. So you are eliminated. Texas took care of business. Bama took care of business. Washington, hot damn, man, that was an awesome performance by them. Took care of business. Every other team that needed to do what it took to get into the college football playoff, they took care of their business. I'm sorry. It stinks. It's unfortunate. Florida State did not do that and therefore was deserving of being left out of the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I said that yesterday in our show open. Like, I can understand the frustration for a lot of people because, look, being 13-0 is something to brag about. I mean, you went undefeated. You won in the championship game. You probably should be in that college football playoff if you had your quarterback. And that is such a important factor into all of this. By no means does it mean that the standings change or that you're not viewed as a great team. You're just not viewed as one of the playoff caliber teams because you didn't have your quarterback. Your defense may have won that game for you, but your defense almost lost the game for you against Miami a couple of weeks prior. So I can't sit here and act like anything about Florida State was college football playoff worthy.
So I see all of these different scenarios that people are floating out there too. But BK, what about, sure, we can go through some of these. BK, what happens if Florida State were to go, or Florida State's quarterback went down in week 3 and then they go on undefeated? Is that different? I guess what you're telling me is that if the quarterback goes down, just don't try? No, that would have been absolutely different. If the quarterback had gone down in week 3 and over the next 10 consecutive weeks with their backup quarterback, they had won those games, they would have earned their way into the playoff. The timing stinks here. It's really unfortunate. Like, I'm being honest when I say, like, I genuinely feel terrible for these kids. But Jordan Travis was a potential Heisman candidate this year. When that guy goes down, it's like if the Chiefs lose Patrick Mahomes or when the Bengals lose Joe Burrow. Guys, they're not eligible at that point to win the Super Bowl. Not because I don't think they're capable, because they're not capable. Like, we can all acknowledge when you have one of the best quarterbacks in whatever level it is that you're playing, that is a massive advantage, right? And if you lose that advantage, it is taken away from you for whatever reason. They're suspended, they're hurt, whatever. it changes how I feel about your team. That is not some hot take. It's football. If Tom Brady got hurt from the Patriots, they are no longer the same team that they were with Tom Brady at the helm. Florida State was an offense-driven team. Their offense was driven by their quarterback. Their quarterback was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He got hurt with 1 week left in the season. I'm sorry, that's how this ends up going. If you go down and you do the power rankings based on the Vegas lines, right? If Florida State were to play this upcoming week, we can just go back to last week. They were a 1.5-point favorite against against Louisville. They would have been like a 10 to 15 point underdog against any of these teams that you put out against them. That doesn't inherently mean that they are not qualified to go up against them, but it does tell you a lot about how not just I view them as a public guy, but how Vegas views them as an entity that will power rank these teams based on the advanced statistical profiles of them. So I don't think this was unfair. I think the committee got this 100% right. It was the first time really that they've had a difficult decision to make under the new format, and I think they did it the right way.
Yeah, I think they got it right. Now, to the question that was asked, if he got hurt week 3, I'm not even sure if they looked like they did against Florida and Louisville. I'm not even sure that undefeated Florida State team would have gotten in, because though it is a bigger sample size, it's still not an impressive sample size. Though you are undefeated, you're barely escaping through some of these wins. Well, you've got Bama, who just Texas, who blew away Oklahoma State, and Bama, who has a bunch of impressive wins this season. And look, I get it, they had close calls with Auburn and they had a close call with South Florida, but I do think the committee got it right. I said this yesterday, and you may disagree with this. I thought the issue for the college football committee was they handled it poorly the week prior. The rankings in the previous week, to me, are very telling, because they lay out the path for everybody. That's why I had an issue with Ohio State being ranked a little bit higher. It's why I had an issue with Florida State being ranked at 4.
But I disagree with that, because, I mean, if there's one that I would have disagreed with, it was the way that they approached Texas last week. The Texas ranking was nonsense. They should not have been ranked 7th in the week prior and then jumped all the way up to 3. That was ridiculous. Based on beating Oklahoma State, come on now. They didn't change that much in your mind of who they were. The Alabama one I thought was fine. They beat the number 1 team in the country. Yeah, if you beat the number 1 team in the country, you deserve to move up the rankings in a significant way. But the Texas one, I'm with you. That was the one that they messed up.
The reason I didn't like the way it was all set up was because if you're going to put Florida State out of the college football playoff, and let's just be honest, I think the committee probably came to that conclusion after the Florida game. I think they knew after the Florida game, this is not a playoff team. Well, then don't put them at 4 in the penultimate rankings, because to me, when I look at the rankings going into championship,
I think they should have been like 7.
Yeah,
in the rankings.
And this is the other thing too, is this also looks bad today, because basically what you said was they can't beat Alabama, so they're not a playoff team, but they can beat Georgia. Like, why are they ahead of them?
Agreed.
And that was my whole issue with it all, was the penultimate.
You got it. You're right there, man.
Penultimate rankings, they tell you the path for everybody. Like, I could tell you, looking at the rankings, like, here's how Alabama gets in. Here's how Texas gets in. Here's how, even though Ohio State I thought was ranked improperly going into this, here's how Ohio State gets into the playoff. When they put them at 4, my assumption was, okay, they are going to evaluate undefeated Power 5 conference champion if they beat Louisville. And then it ended up not being the case. And look, again, I think they got it right, but I think the messaging leading up into that, even though they would say it's the 4 best teams, it's the 4 best teams, well, then don't put them at 4.
Agreed.
Because I think you came to that conclusion after the Florida game. They're not a playoff team.
Michigan, Washington, I think is exactly how it should have been. I think Texas should be the number 3 team. I agreed with them putting Bama at number 4. What I would have done differently is I would have had Georgia at number 5. I would have had, honestly, Oregon at number 6. I would have had Ohio State at number 7 and probably Florida State at number 8. I think you could have made a strong argument, though, for Florida State at number 7 over Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State was as good as we let on this year. But for me, Florida State wouldn't have been in my top 6. I just would have dropped them down even further. That's how I feel about them. So I do feel bad. 13-0 should not be disrespected this way. But when you look at their resume, man, it's just not a good one. It's not a very good resume. They did beat LSU, and they deserve credit for that this season, but so did Alabama. And then Texas beat Alabama as well. The resume for Alabama was simply better than the resume for Florida State. And I saw somebody say this over the weekend, and I think they're 100% correct. What really happened here is we saw the death of the ACC. If this happens to a 13-0 ACC championship team, because I don't think this would have happened if the exact same scenario took place with Alabama or Georgia and they were in their same spot. this happening to an ACC team that won the ACC championship tells you everything you need to know about the future of that conference. We are officially in a situation where it is a two-team conference or two-conference NCAA. It's the Big Ten, it's the SEC, and it's everybody else.
Yep.
Everybody else is fending for themselves right now. I would not be surprised if sooner rather than later we see Florida State and Clemson jumping to the ACC or SEC at the first opportunity possible because of this. Because this is a bleep ton of money that is being left on the table right now from the ACC by their teams not being able to get into the college football playoff. So big long-term effect, I think, is that. The other one thing that I wanted to get to college football-wise, guys, man, I was so excited about this Mizzou versus Ohio State matchup. I thought it was the ideal situation. You go into the Cotton Bowl. It's an easy little hop, skip, and jump for everybody that's coming from St. Louis or Kansas City. For Mizzou fans, you're going up against a nationally known program at Ohio State. You're able to make a real statement on a national stage. I thought this was the ideal situation. Good opponent, good place to go. Awesome. And now their quarterbacks in the transfer portal, their number 2 wide receivers in the transfer portal, and you're probably not going to see Marvin Harrison Jr. That sucks, man. It just takes away from some of the appeal of this game.
Yeah. Liberty not looking too bad,
Good thing is Mizzou's going to pull out a victory, and the only thing that matters is what's on paper. A Cotton Bowl win.
Boring.
This sucks. I'm mad about it.
He is complaining again.
I didn't care even if they had the guys.
I really didn't care either. You got the Cotton Bowl. That's all I really cared about.
It's disappointing. I would have enjoyed seeing them go up against a name brand program. I thought they were going to have their quarterback, and I thought they were going to have their number 2 receiver on the team. I knew Marvin Harrison Jr. was likely to sit out, and that's fine. Like they played a decent amount this year and last without Marvin Harrison Jr. when he was hurt.
I just can't wait to see Ryan Day be all upset when they lose. I like watching him upset.
He's back channeling to try to get an NFL gig, man.
Yeah, that ain't going to happen.
There's a lot of stuff going on up at Ohio State right now. All right, coming up next, the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Good to be back today. Getting cussed out on the text line. Just like old times. I missed you guys.
There is one dude that is just, I mean, no joke. In a matter of 10 minutes, he has sent like 20 texts, and it's the same question over and over.
You know what I love about college football is that it makes people feel this way. And this was a great college football season. And one of the reasons why it was so much fun is because there were conversations like this, arguments like this, that were able to take place.
Was it college football or just your terrible takes?
All the above, probably. The combination of the two really brings out the best in everybody.
I like that.
It is one thing that I will miss about the 4-team playoff is how angry people get about the 4th versus the 5th team. I don't know that that same amount of excitement, exuberance is going to be there about the 12-team playoff. 12 versus 13 might not have the same.
T-Bone will just complain all the time next year, be like, man, these teams don't deserve to be in the playoffs.
That's true. And when they're getting killed in the first round, remember that.
Remember Florida State with their backup quarterback getting killed in the first round of the playoffs.
By the way, how perfect would it be if Bama gets destroyed by Michigan?
Oh, that'll be
and
amazing.
Florida State beats Georgia.
That'll be amazing.
Well, you know it'll happen too because Georgia's guys probably won't show up either.
All right, Alex, before we get out of here today, hand things over to the Fast Lane. They're coming up in just about 5 minutes or so at the top of the hour. I want to spend a little bit more time on Jordan Binnington. You've been all in on Binner all along. You never once wavered in your appreciation of him, your support of him. Even with that, last night was different. That was one of the single best individual performances that I've seen by a Blues player since I moved back here to St. Louis in a regular season game. I moved here in 2016, and since then, I don't know that I can recall a more dominant individual performance than what Binner put together last night, again, in a regular season game, especially when you take into account how great the opponent was. Can you put into context for us what you witnessed last night from him?
What I witnessed last night is something that Joe and I have talked about in the past for Jordan Binnington. He is one of the very few goaltenders in the National Hockey League that at any point a team would say, I want that guy in my net to start a playoff game. And Jordan Binnington showcased that last night. It's odd to say that Binnington had a coming out party last night in the NHL because he's won a Stanley Cup. He was an all-star. He has had multiple seasons where he's looked like a dominant goaltender, but it's also fallen victim to having poor play in front of him, and he is falling victim to that. But last night felt like one of those games that the bigger stage saw what Jordan Binnington was capable of and saying, okay, forget about the antics that people complain about, which like some of the best goaltenders have had post-whistle antics. Forget about the team being bad in front of him. Jordan Binnington showed the ability to make the saves when you need him to, and that's really what we judge goaltenders on. Every goaltender will have an up-and-down moment in seasons. Thatcher Demko has had it. Aiden Hill had it. Yusei Saros has had it with Nashville. Everybody goes through it. But how consistent can you be? And Jordan Binnington has shown that consistency from the start of the season up until last night.
16 high-danger saves last night. 16 for 16 on high-danger shots against. It is the third most high-danger saves that he's had in any regular season game in his NHL career. The other two, he had 19 saves against high-danger chances. Both of those, by the way, against Vegas. One in February of 2020 before the season got shut down, and then the other April of 2021. One of the most dominant performances you'll see. Jordan Binnington showing up in a big, big way, stealing the Blues 2 points last night. Hey, join in on the holiday spirit by helping 101 ESPN support Operation Food Search throughout the month of December, and we're partnering up with STL Shirt Company to offer a special 101 ESPN online merch store. That's all this month. We're offering 101 ESPN t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and so much more. Plus, we brought back some of your favorite designs, including the Dunk shirts, Be Patient, and Jamie Rivers and BT jerseys. Order any 101 ESPN swag during the month of December, and all proceeds will go to support Operation Food Search. All you got to do, go to 101ESPN.com. That is powered by McBride Homes. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.